Chapter 781. After the 9 of them discussed, they directly issued a Tao order to all living beings, summoning all the Khanate Taoist priests in the Eldritch world to head to the chaos beyond the heavens to hunt the Khanate ferocious beasts. This was a Tao order, an order of the heavenly Tao. No one could violate it. Even if they did not want to go, they had to go after the Tao order was issued. As a part of the Eldritch world, they usually enjoyed the resources of the world. Now that the enemy was invading, how could they not contribute at all? If anyone did not go, the 9 primordial chaos experts would not mind making an example of them and sending them back to the world. It could be considered as repaying the kindness of the world for giving birth to them. As soon as the Tao order was issued, it directly sounded in the minds of all the Daluo Taoist priests, letting them understand the cause and effect of this battle. There was no race in this battle. Anyone who went to the chaos beyond the heavens was fighting for the Eldritch world and all living beings of the world. They should have great merit. When the battle was over, the heavenly Tao would appear and give endless merit to reward the heroes. On the eve of the Tao order, in the human territory, the human Taoist priests were bored and were thinking about how to play with the rebel army. However, suddenly, the Tao order descended and asked them to leave the Eldritch world and head to the chaos beyond the heavens to fight the Khanate ferocious beasts. In an instant, the human Taoist priests looked at the rebel army in front of them and were dumbfounded. Now that the human emperor was seriously injured and the rebel army had not been eliminated, how could they leave so easily? If they left at this time, wouldn't they be giving the rebel army a chance? However, they had to obey the Tao order. If they did not go to the chaos beyond the heavens, they would probably be killed by the Saint now. After hesitating for a while, the human Taoist priests looked at the rebel army with a dangerous gaze. They originally wanted to play with the rebel army, but now it seemed that there was no chance. With this thought in mind, everyone attacked. They used their strongest techniques to kill the rebel army. They wanted to kill the rebel army in one blow. At the critical moment, 2 bright rays of light suddenly rushed from the Kunlun mountain, emitting the aura of the human Tao and entered the bodies of Taoist priest Ziyun and Taoist priest Donghua. It was the destiny of the human race that had been snatched away by the Grand Pure One. At that moment, the 20% of providence had been split into 2 by the Grand Pure One and entered the bodies of Taoist Ziyun and Taoist Donghua at the same time. Rumble. In an instant, the aura of the 2 of them skyrocketed. Very quickly, they stepped into the full circle of the Great Sage Realm from the early stages of the Great Sage Realm, becoming true powerful beings. Aha! As soon as their overall strength skyrocketed, both of them threw their attacks at the numerous Taoist priests of the human race without hesitation. Terrifying divine abilities erupted from their hands and destroyed all the divine abilities thrown at them. At the same time, a powerful chaotic aura erupted from God's body. It enveloped an area of several million miles, blotting out the sky. Everyone's divine abilities had just arrived when they were swallowed by the chaos chi that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. They didn't even cause a single ripple. Seeing this, the group of Taoist priests of the human race flew into a rage. They were about to unleash their Tao bodies and form the cosmic light formation of the galaxy to fight to the death. However, at that moment, Feng Zichen's ethereal voice suddenly sounded in their ears. All of you retreat. There's no need to fight with them pointlessly. It's better to head to the chaos beyond the heavens as soon as possible and capture Khanate ferocious beasts for the human race. Remember, while ensuring your own safety, if there's a chance to capture a Khanate ferocious beast alive, do your best to do so. Don't be afraid of losses. Compared to capturing a Khanate ferocious beast alive, any loss is worth it. At the end, Feng Zichen's voice became softer and softer until it disappeared. Everyone looked at each other. Although they didn't understand what the human emperor meant, they couldn't disobey the human emperor's orders. Therefore, everyone glared at the rebel army and said, "Humph, you guys are really lucky this time. A Khanate ferocious beast happened to appear and saved your lives." Otherwise, at this point, everyone sneered and left one after another, heading to the chaos beyond the heavens to prepare for battle. Although they didn't say anything threatening in the end, everyone knew that it wasn't anything good. Seeing that the Khanate Taoist priests had left, the rebel army couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. With the Taoist priests around, they couldn't see any hope of winning at all. All they had was endless despair. Now that they had finally left, the huge burden on the rebel army's heart was gone. Of course they could relax. Attacking the ancestral land of the human race was just around the corner. As for the Taoist priests' threats, as long as they won the final victory and held high positions, the human Taoist priests wouldn't be able to do anything to them for the time being, no matter how strong they were. Moreover, after controlling the fate of the human race, it was hard to say who was stronger between them and the Taoist priests. Tsk have they finally made their move? In the human emperor's palace, Feng Zichen's eyes lit up when he saw the 20% of the human race's fate that was added to ancestor Hong Yun and the East Wang Gong. This was his chance to take back the 20% of the human race's fate. As long as he defeated the two of them, the 20% of the human race's fate that the Grand Pure One had taken away would not only flow back to the human race, but it would also bring the fate of the ancient powerhouses who had reincarnated into the human race's fate. With this, the fate of the human race would undoubtedly increase by a lot. This was good fortune. Judging from the current situation of the human race, their fate had almost reached its peak. There was basically no possibility of them becoming stronger on their own. If they wanted to continue pretending to be strong, they could only devour the fate of other races. However, devouring the fate of other races was not that simple. Other than making them take the initiative to submit, they could only suppress them with force. However, they could suppress them with force. Now, there were many powerful beings who were dissatisfied with the human race. However, they couldn't find a suitable reason to attack the human race. If the human race took the initiative to start a war and attack other races, wouldn't that be a reason to come knocking on their door? At that time, the saint would raise his arm and call for help. The human race would become the public enemy of the world. If it really developed to this extent, even if the human race was the protagonist of the world, they would not be able to escape the fate of defeat. Since they could not take the initiative to attack, they could only wait passively for others to submit. This was much more difficult than suppressing them with force. Even Feng Zichen could not think of a way to do this in a short time. However, now he did not need to think of a way. The saint had taken the initiative to send him fate. The fate of the ancient powerhouses who had reincarnated into the human race was not a small number. It was comparable to several powerful races. At the very least, it could increase the fate of the human race by 5% or even 10%. How could he not take the benefits that were sent to him? Therefore, Feng Zichen allowed these rebels to grow stronger. Now, the stronger they were, the more fate they would accumulate. When Feng Zichen finally set things right, they would be able to obtain more benefits. As for going overboard, it did not exist. If it really went overboard, Feng Zichen would directly reveal his trump card and release the Human Dao Imperial Court. With the fate of the ancient human race, he would pour the fate of the human race into the fate of the current human race. He would stabilize the universe in one fell swoop and sweep away all the turmoil. If the Human Dao Imperial Court was not enough, he still had the Heavenly Fiend Path, the Yin Court, and the Myriad Realms Trading City. I, Feng Zichen, am the biggest old schemer in the primordial world. I have the Human Emperor, the Great Emperor of Ziwei, the Great Emperor of North Star, the Great Emperor of Fengdu, the Great Emperor of the South Pole, and a series of other identities as well as an unimaginable layout. With countless trump cards, how could he go overboard? Wasn't this a joke? With so many trump cards, any few of them could calm the current chaos of the human race in one fell swoop. Looking outside and seeing that the rebel army had already begun to attack the city, Feng Zichen could not help but shake his head. The rebel army's attack was very strong. If he did not send volunteers, those divine cities would not be able to be defended. The divine cities were very powerful, but they had a flaw, and that was that they did not attack the inside. What did that mean? In other words, if there were foreign invaders, the power of the divine cities would be fully unleashed to resist the invasion of foreign enemies or to kill foreign enemies. However, if a civil war broke out among the human race, the power of the divine cities would not be activated. Compared to ordinary cities, there was no difference except that it was a little harder. Why was there such a setting? Of course, it was because Feng Zichen had deliberately set it up. If he did not do so, when the power of the divine cities was unleashed, how could the rebel army attack? Without the Daluo Taoist priests, who could break through the defenses of the divine cities. In this way, even if the Daluo Taoist priests left, the rebel army would still not be able to advance. Then, how could Feng Zichen carry out his next plan? These were all living fates. How could he give them up? In order to give the rebel army a chance to attack the ancestral land of the human race, Feng Zichen had really put in a lot of effort. Retracting his gaze from the rebel army, Feng Zichen looked at the heavenly realm that overlapped with the human territory. At this moment, after being nourished by the earth chi of the human territory and nurtured by the origin of countless experts, the heavenly realm could be put to use although it had not been fully opened. Seeing this, Feng Zichen's expression changed slightly, and he called for one of his trusted aides. He took out the 10,000 god painting and ordered the aide, "Pass down my order. Gather all the skilled craftsmen of the human race and build a 10,000 god platform outside the Emperor's city based on the layout of the Gaochen Celestial Palace. Then, when the 10,000 god platform is completed, stick this painting on it. With that, Feng Zichen handed the 10,000 god painting to the aide. Building the 10,000 god platform and taking out the 10,000 god painting meant that he was about to become a god. At this point in the war, it was time for the curtains to become a god. Yes, your majesty. After the aide took the 10,000 god painting, he left to gather people to build the 10,000 god platform. 3 secs, your doomsday has arrived. After the aide left, Feng Zichen looked at the distant sky and said with some anticipation, the 3 realms of heaven, earth, and man would form a god together. How many lives would the 3 secs have to use to fill it up? Moreover, at this point in the war, the agreement in the Purple Cloud Palace could be said to be completely invalid. Who would be on the list, who would be carefree, and who would be destroyed in body and soul? The saints did not count. It all depended on their own abilities. Alright. The 3 sects here referred to Chan sect, Jie sect, and Western sect, not Chan sect, Jie sect, and Ren sect. There were only 2 people in the entire Ren sect. This god conferment tribulation had nothing to do with them. It was most suitable for the Western sect to replace the Ren sect, who asked them to have more people. This god conferment tribulation was destined from the beginning. Whoever had more disciples would be at a disadvantage. The human emperor had ordered to gather all the skilled craftsmen in the world to build the 10,000 god platform. As soon as the order was issued, the world was in an uproar. Many skilled craftsmen moved and rushed to the human emperor city through the teleportation flying ship. Even many people from the Gauchian Heavenly Palace came to the mortal world. Although they did not know what the 10,000 god platform was, they knew that it was the human emperor's order. If they succeeded, wouldn't they show their faces in front of the human emperor? If they were lucky enough to be remembered by the human emperor, they would really be like carps leaping through the dragon gate. From then on, it would not be difficult for them to achieve the Tao. Everyone knew that the human emperor's talent was recognized as the best in the primordial world. Even Dao ancestor Hongjun and Donghuang Tai, the 2 strongest heavens primordial age and the strongest heavens primordial age, had to admit defeat in front of him and admit that they could not compare with him in terms of talent. If they could be valued by such a person and have a cultivation technique tailored for them, it would not be difficult for them to become Taoist priests. One had to know that in the legends of the human race, the Saint Emperor Zichen clan was best at nurturing experts. In ancient times, the human race was weak and at the bottom of the primordial world. However, under his leadership, the human race became one of the strongest races in the primordial world and gave birth to countless experts. In the end, under his leadership, the human race even threatened the demon race's rule. As a result, the demon race's leader, Di Jun, who was the celestial emperor at the time, personally led an army to attack the human race and destroyed the glorious ancient human civilization. It had to be said that legends were legends. The more they spread, the more they changed. It was undeniable that the ancient human race was not weak. However, it was a bit of a stretch to say that they threatened the demon race's rule. The truth was that the ancient human race could not withstand a single blow from the ancient demon race. However, the current human race did not believe it. Our human race is so strong. How could we be easily defeated by the demon race? We must have gone through a bloody battle before we were unfortunately defeated by the demon race's conspiracy. This caused our glorious civilization to decline. Hui, the demon race is really despicable. It was no wonder that the current human race thought so. Looking around, the demon race in the primordial world had already become the food of the human race, let alone fighting against the human race. Looking at the current human race, how could the current human race's younger generation believe that the ancient human race was once beaten by the demon race? It was impossible. How could people who had never experienced that era know the horror of the ancient demon race? Turning a weak race into a strong race in the primordial world. This method was really fascinating. Of course, if this method was used on an individual, that person would not be able to fly. It was said that more than half of the current Khanate Taoist priests of the human race were nurtured by the human emperor. As long as the human emperor liked them, they would definitely become Taoist priests. Everyone came here to be noticed by the human emperor so that they could fight for a brilliant future. As for the human emperor being seriously injured, regardless of whether the saint really believed it or not, they did not believe it. Chapter 782. Their sage emperor loved faking his death the most. It was possible that his heavy injuries this time were also an act. The sage emperor was a wily old fox, wise and mighty. How could he be tricked by a saint? This serious injury was definitely an act. His true self was hiding in the human emperor palace. He must be secretly plotting something. Perhaps the old man was staring at this place. Thinking of this, everyone subconsciously puffed out their chests and perked up. They had to perform well later to leave a good impression on the sage emperor. A human from the Gauchian heavenly palace brought the blueprint of the myriad god platform. Everyone built the myriad god platform according to the blueprint. The next step was much simpler. Many skilled craftsmen of the human race worked together. Soon, a huge myriad god platform was built outside the human emperor city. After the myriad god platform was built, Feng Zichen's trusted aide remembered his orders. He walked up to the myriad god platform and respectfully hung the myriad god portrait on it. Strangely, after the myriad god portrait came to the myriad god platform, it floated to the center of the platform and slowly opened. In an instant, endless divine light spewed out from the myriad god portrait. It was extremely dazzling and enveloped the entire human race. Then, information about becoming a god naturally appeared in the minds of all living beings. When the myriad god portrait opened, anyone with merit, regardless of whether they had cultivated in life or not, could enter the role of gods after death. They could either protect an area for the mountain god or the earth god, protect the people for the kitchen god, or govern an area for the city god. In short, the myriad god portrait had all kinds of deity positions. It covered all the daily needs of the human race. There was no need to worry about not finding a suitable deity position. Anyone with merit could enter the role of gods as long as they were willing. They could cultivate the divine path of incense and accumulate merit. If they accumulated enough merit in the future, they could directly become a righteous god of heaven and earth. They would receive the providence of heaven and earth and wield the power of heaven and earth. They could also directly reincarnate with their merit and start all over again. If a cultivator of the divine path performed well during their reign, they would receive the protection of all living beings when they reincarnated. Not only would they be free from the mystery of being in the womb, but they would also be able to avoid all demons. He could easily achieve results without any worries or disasters in his life. This was the biggest difference between the gods of the myriad gods painting and the gods of the investiture of the gods. The former was a free being, a divine spirit of the human Tao. The latter was enslaved by humans, a righteous god of heaven and earth. One belonged to the human Tao while the other belonged to the heavenly Tao. The difference was clear. Of course, the heaven and earth righteous gods on the investiture of the gods could be supported by the power of heaven and earth. Their strength was far superior to the gods on the myriad gods painting, but they didn't have freedom. Whether it was good or bad was hard to say. It all depended on the thoughts of the people on the list. As soon as the news of godhood spread, the high-level cultivators were still fine, but the low-level cultivators and ordinary people became excited. Based on the current situation of the human race, those who were still unable to set foot on the path of cultivation had to have terrible talent. Even if they were not born with spiritual chi, they were not far from it. It was almost impossible for such a person to cultivate. However, the appearance of the myriad gods diagram had given them another choice. That was the incense divine Tao. If he couldn't absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, then wouldn't he be able to absorb the power of faith? If he absorbed the power of faith and became a human Tao god, he would still be able to grow stronger. Moreover, he would be able to accumulate merit. This was another path of transcendence. How could ordinary mortals not be excited? It was human nature to pursue extraordinary power. As for the low-level cultivators, they were even more excited than ordinary people. Low-level cultivators were people whose cultivation levels were not high enough and whose potential had been exhausted. It would be very difficult for them to improve in the future. These people had no future and couldn't see any room for improvement. They had long despaired. However, the appearance of the myriad gods diagram allowed them to see another path of advancement. How could they not be excited? Whether it was the immortal Tao or the martial Tao, neither was enough for them to improve. Since that was the case, they were willing to try the incense divine Tao. After all, their situation was already like this. It didn't matter if they failed. These low-level cultivators were different from ordinary humans. They had already tasted the joy of power. Therefore, their pursuit of power was even more intense than that of ordinary humans. Good, the opportunity had come. The key now was, how would he obtain merit? Not everyone had merit on their bodies. If he couldn't obtain great merit, he could only start with small things. And that was doing good deeds. Not to mention other things, doing good deeds would definitely give him merit. The more good deeds he did, the more merit he would obtain. For a time, the human race set off a huge competition to do good deeds. Not long after Feng Zichen ordered people to post the myriad gods diagram, Great Emperor Ziwei, Heavenly Emperor, and Great Emperor of the South Pole in the Heavenly Court seemed to have sensed it. They jointly took out the investiture of the gods and hung it on the southern heavenly gate. Once the investiture of the gods was out, the immortal god calamity began. In the blink of an eye, monstrous tribulation aura spread out from the void. Soon, it spread to every corner of the chaos realm. At this time, all those who cultivated the postnatal Tao sensed that the immortal god calamity had arrived. If they wanted to take another step forward, they had to step into the mortal world and transcend the tribulation. If they passed it, everything would be fine. They would be free for an eternity. If they couldn't, everything would be over. They would die and their souls would be destroyed. If they faced the tribulation and their souls entered the investiture of the gods, although they were lucky to not die, they would have no fate with the immortal Tao. In the future they would belong to the divine Tao and enjoy the status of a righteous god. They seemed to be immortal, but they would be enslaved by others. It would be miserable. When the immortal god calamity began, although the immortals were helpless, they couldn't refuse. They had no choice but to take out their weapons and enter the mortal world to transcend the tribulation. Transcending the tribulation now? Since it was a killing tribulation, they naturally had to kill to transcend the tribulation. This time, when the immortals entered the mortal world, they were destined to set off a bloody storm. They would kill until the immortals cried blood. Only in this way could they survive the killing tribulation. As soon as the immortal god calamity broke out, the 5 saints who had long been prepared, immediately arranged for their disciples to enter the mortal world to transcend the tribulation and assist the destined Son of Heaven to obtain the position of the human emperor. Under the orders of the 3 pure ones, except for Yun Zhongzi and perfected Lord Daoda, the rest of the disciples of the Chan school all left Kunlun Mountain to assist the East King, Taoist Dong Hua, to compete for the position of the human emperor. As for the disciples of the Jie school, except for the 4 personal disciples who had previously helped the human clan, the 3 pure ones, and more than a dozen other intersect disciples, the rest of the disciples all left the East Sea to assist the East King of the human clan, Taoist Dong Hua. There were more than 10,000 disciples of the Jie school. The scene of 10,000 immortals leaving the East Sea together really alarmed many people. Unfortunately, their trip was destined to be a tragedy from the very beginning. Although they were in high spirits at the moment after the war, those who could really return here were probably more than 10. While the 3 pure ones sent their disciples to assist the East King, the 2 sages of the West did not fall behind. They opened the mountain gate and sent their disciples to assist the West King, Taoist Ziyun. Moreover, the 2 sages of the West were very cunning. They felt that it was not safe to only send their disciples, so they had to add more chips to Taoist Ziyun. Therefore the 2 of them came up with some ideas. It was unknown where the 2 of them got the Khanate Phoenix Chi from. Through it, they used a secret technique to forcibly extract a trace of the Phoenix clan's destiny and added it to Taoist Ziyun. Because of this, the Phoenix ancestor was furious. She came to the world at all costs and personally rushed to the West to find trouble with the 2 sages of the West. The 2 sages of the West were in the wrong and naturally did not dare to meet the Phoenix ancestor. They found an excuse to hide. They knew that the Phoenix ancestor could not stay in the world for a long time in her state. As long as they delayed for a while, the Phoenix ancestor's power would be exhausted and she would naturally leave. Their idea was quite good. Unfortunately, they forgot that as the former ruler of the world, the Phoenix ancestor was not easy to deal with. Unable to find the 2 sages of the West, the Phoenix ancestor was furious and burned Mount Meru to vent her anger. Only then did she swagger away. The Phoenix ancestor's Nirvana heavenly fire was also known as the inextinguishable heavenly fire. It was powerful enough to be ranked in the top 3 in the primitive world. It was said that it could even ignite all Khanate Taos. Its power could be imagined. Once the Nirvana heavenly fire fell into Mount Meru, it burned everything it saw, whether it was soil, stone, or water. As long as it existed, it could become its fuel. Therefore, in the blink of an eye, the Nirvana heavenly fire spread to the entire Mount Meru. As for the protective mountain array of Mount Meru, it had been burned by the Nirvana heavenly fire long ago and became one of its main fuel. Due to their fear of the Phoenix ancestor, even if Mount Meru was burned, the 2 of them did not dare to come out. They could only watch as the Nirvana heavenly fire spread and burned inch by inch on Mount Meru. After the Phoenix ancestor vented her anger and left Mount Meru, the 2 sages of the West hurriedly ran out to put out the fire. Unfortunately, the Nirvana heavenly fire was still too powerful. By the time Zhuanti and Jane put out the fire, Mount Meru had been burned to a barren land. Nothing on the mountain was left. Everything was burned to ashes. Mount Meru, which was originally shining with divine light, was now pitch black like a huge piece of black coal. Fortunately, The disciples and the main treasures on the mountain had been moved away by the two of them in advance. Otherwise, the Western sect would have lost more than that. It would have been enough to make the two sages of the Western sect vomit blood. However, even so, the two sages of the Western sect had lost a lot of face this time. Their mountain gate had been burned. How could they not be embarrassed? Fortunately, the two of them were already used to the destruction of their mountain gate and did not care too much. It had to be said that Mount Meru was quite unlucky. There were only two owners in total, but each one was worse than the other. First, it was destroyed once by the demon ancestor Luoho. Then, it was destroyed several times by the West sect. The two of them were already used to it. They had also repaired Mount Meru. From this, it could be seen how many times Mount Meru had been destroyed. This was the divine mountain in the primordial world, second only to Mount Kunlun. It was the ancestral mountain of the West. The most miserable sacred mountain in the primordial world was Mount Meru. It was the most miserable. After Mount Meru was destroyed, the two sages of the Western sect were heartbroken. Why did they take the risk of offending the Phoenix ancestor and forcibly extract the fate of the Phoenix clan and bless Taoist Ziyun? Did they still remember the image of the Shang dynasty's fate? The destined Xian bird descended and gave birth to the Shang dynasty. The image of the Shang dynasty's fate was the Xian bird. The Xian bird was one of the 5 phoenixes. It was one of the descendants of the phoenix. Before Feng Zichen became the human emperor, he was the son of the Shang emperor. Although in the end he replaced the Xian bird with Xianhua and reset the universe. However, it was undeniable that there was more or less a trace of the Xian bird's aura in the current human clan's fate. The two sages of the Western sect had sensed the aura of the Xian bird. That was why they had coveted the fate of the Phoenix clan. That was what they thought. Although the Xian bird was strong, it was still weaker than the Phoenix clan. In this way they could transform Taoist Ziyun's fate into the image of the Phoenix clan. Wouldn't they be able to suppress the human emperor? It had to be said that the two sages of the Western sect were really geniuses. They could even come up with such an idea. It was indeed as they thought. If the image of Taoist Ziyun's fate appeared in the form of the Phoenix clan, it could indeed restrain the Xian bird. Although it was only a trivial trace, there was no room for error in the battle of the Great Path. If they could take advantage of it, they would take advantage of it. Because the point that they did not care about might become the last straw that broke the camel's back in the end. It would become the key to victory. On Mount Kunlun, the 3 pure ones saw the performance of the two sages of the Western sect. The expressions on their faces were extremely interesting. They did not expect that there would be someone who was so shrewd that they would not let go of even the slightest opportunity. Hiss. In the human emperor's palace, Feng Zichen saw the performance of the two sages of the Western sect and could not help but gasp. The two of them were so terrifying that they really could not be kept alive. This time he had really met his match. This shrewdness was half of his style. Unfortunately, he really had too many backup plans, so many that he could not bear to use them to bully the other party. Otherwise, with just the two sages of the Western sect's move, Feng Zichen would have to find a way to break the situation now. But there were no ifs in reality. Feng Zichen, who had countless trump cards, was now sitting calmly on the fishing platform, watching the performance of the 5 sages unhurriedly. In this wave he was already invincible. Countless years of painstaking calculations were not in vain. All of them were revealed at this moment, becoming his invincible capital. Unless Pangu came back to life and stood on the side of the 3 pure ones, Feng Zichen would never fail. Even if Tao ancestor Hongjun came, Feng Zichen would not hesitate to use the Dharma of Pangu standing in the primitive world to fight him back. Oh, I'm so confident. Invincible. The 3 pure ones sent their disciples to support Dong Wang Kung, and the impact was not so simple. It should be known that this time, not only the disciples of the 3 sects needed to enter the world to pass the tribulation, but also all the cultivators who cultivated the acquired path. There were more than hundreds of millions of cultivators in the world. The number was enough to make one's scalp tingle. Among them, how many were the disciples and disciples of the 3 pure ones? Feng Zichen did not know, and neither did the 3 pure ones, but they all knew that this number was definitely beyond their imagination. Because the entire acquired path was built by the 3 pure ones. If one really wanted to trace the source, few acquired path cultivators could not be related to the 3 pure ones. Now, the 3 pure ones had made it clear that they wanted to support Taoist Donghua, and the impact on these cultivators could be imagined. Chapter 783. Apart from some cultivators who wanted to settle their personal grudges, most of the remaining cultivators chose to seek refuge with East King Taoist Donghua after hesitating for a while. intending to fight for a future with him. Not all cultivators thought that the investiture of the gods was a cage. Many cultivators dreamed of entering the investiture of the gods. After becoming immortal, wasn't the pursuit of immortality? However, immortality was difficult to prove. Most golden immortals could not reach the threshold of the Daluo Taoist priests even if they spent their entire lives. Therefore, the alternative immortality brought about by leaving their names on the investiture of the gods became the pursuit of these cultivators. Those who sought the Tao were not afraid of death. Those who sought immortality were most afraid of death. After receiving the help of the itinerant immortals, Taoist Donghua's power could be said to have expanded rapidly. Soon, it surpassed the forces of the other two rebel leaders and left them far behind. A single itinerant immortal might not be strong, but when the power of most itinerant immortals was combined, the power that erupted would make even saints look askance. It might not be stronger than the Jie school, but it was definitely stronger than the Chan school. The East King Taoist Donghua had the help of the three pure ones, while the West King Taoist Ziyun had the help of the two sages of the West. What did the South King God have? He had the help of the Chaos Fiend God. Silently, the majestic Chaos Essence Chi spread in the territory of the South King God, causing the living beings there to slowly become stronger. Not only the human clan but all living beings bathed in the Chaos Essence Chi, regardless of whether they were flowers, trees, birds, beasts, fish, or insects, would obtain great benefits. This was because this was the Chi of all creation, which was better than the Chi of heaven and earth. However, the purpose of releasing the Chaos Essence Chi was not to strengthen the living beings under his command. This was just a side effect. His real purpose was to strengthen the Khanate ferocious beasts under his command. That's right, Khanate ferocious beasts. They were not Khanate ferocious beasts from the chaos, but Khanate ferocious beasts born in the untainted land. As long as heaven and earth existed, there would be endless ferocious beasts. Therefore, there was never a lack of Khanate ferocious beasts in the untainted land. However, after a few massacres, even if the Khanate ferocious beasts could reproduce, their vitality would be greatly damaged. From their original state where they could be seen everywhere, they were reduced to rare species in the primeval age. If it weren't for the fact that the heaven and earth had been nurturing Xiantian ferocious beasts, this race would have been wiped out long ago. It was precisely because of this that Feng Zichen set his sights elsewhere. He looked down on the Khanate ferocious beasts in the untainted world. They were too weak and too few. But he didn't like it, but God did. Well, it wasn't that he was interested in them. It was mainly because in the current situation, he had no other way to improve the strength of his subordinates other than using the innate ferocious beasts. He saw that the forces of East King Taoist Donghua and West King Taoist Ziyun were constantly strengthening, while his force was still in place. He was about to be left far behind by the two of them. God is so anxious. He had no choice but to use his authority as a chaos fiend god to forcibly conscript tens of thousands of innate ferocious beasts. As soon as the chaos demon god gave the order, the inborn ferocious beasts dared not refuse. They immediately ran over. Tens of thousands of innate ferocious beasts were a large number, but their strength was unsightly. There were almost no Taijingxian beasts, and only 2 or 3 golden immortals. The rest were all Shen immortals and divine immortals who were not very useful. Once again, God had no choice but to grit his teeth and dig out a piece of flesh from his broken body of the chaos demon god. He turned it into the purest chaotic vital energy and poured it into the bodies of these innate ferocious beasts, forcibly improving their realm. Fortunately, now that the Daluo Taoist priests were not around, God only needed to improve their strength to the level of Lord of Tai. Tens of thousands of innate ferocious beasts at the level of Lord of Tai were definitely an extremely powerful force. In this era when the Daluo Taoist priests were not around, they could almost sweep the world. After improving the strength of the innate ferocious beasts, God selected tens of thousands of warriors from his subordinates to control these innate ferocious beasts. They were called ferocious beast riders. No matter how bold God was, he could not directly release tens of thousands of innate ferocious beasts to attack the divine city of the human clan. Otherwise, the human clan and the rebel army would join hands to kill him first. Innate ferocious beasts were the public enemies of the untainted land. Once they were discovered, all the creatures in the untainted land had the obligation to kill them. Under such circumstances, 1 or 2 innate ferocious beasts might not be a big deal, but once the innate ferocious beasts formed a large scale, what awaited them would be the joint strangulation of the untainted land masters. Therefore, in the untainted land, there were very few innate ferocious beasts in a large scale. God was determined to be the human emperor, so it was even more impossible for him to do such a heinous thing. Therefore, God thought for a long time and came up with a wonderful idea. He turned the innate ferocious beasts into the mounts of his subordinates and formed a powerful cavalry. After becoming the mounts, their lives were controlled by their masters, and the innate ferocious beasts became controllable. In this way, when they formed a large scale, the world had no reason to attack them. He was really a clever little ghost. After solving the problem of the innate ferocious beasts, God's power rose and became the power second only to the East King among the three rebel armies. The invincible innate ferocious beast cavalry was the capital of the righteous God to dominate the world. The West King Taoist Ziyun became the weakest of the three. However, Taoist Ziyun did not care at all. Although he was the weakest, he had the closest relationship with the human clan. He was the natural human emperor. Now Taoist Ziyun was waiting. He was waiting for the three sides to kill each other and exhaust each other. When all three sides were defeated and injured, it would be time for him to rise. Good fellow? Each one is better than the other. In the human emperor palace, Feng Zichen's eyes lit up when he saw God use innate ferocious beasts to create an invincible cavalry. This was a good idea. Why didn't he think of it? When the time was right, he would do the same and create an invincible cavalry. In terms of generosity, Feng Zichen was much more generous. If he wanted to make a move, it would not be as simple as Taoist Lord of Tai. At the very least, it would be Taoist priests who were half a step away from Daluo. Looking again, Feng Zichen found that the East King Kung and the Chaos Demon God were showing signs of attacking the city. He ordered, inform the soldiers guarding the city. If they can hold the city, then do it. If they can't, then abandon it. Return to the ancestral land of the human clan first. The battle between us is not about the loss of a city or a land, but about the game with the upper class. In short, if you can't win, then retreat. Return to the ancestral land of the human clan first and preserve your useful bodies for the final battle. After receiving Feng Zichen's order, the soldiers guarding the city immediately understood that His Majesty had a big plan and was ready to trick them. As for being scared? What a joke. In front of the three saints, the Saint Emperor dared to fight to the death. How could such a person be scared? Wouldn't that be a joke? After receiving Feng Zichen's order, the soldiers guarding the city felt confident and no longer had any burdens. They planned to have fun with the rebel army. The plan was carried out boldly, as if defending the city was not a big deal. Indeed, it was not a big deal. Since His Majesty had given the order that they did not need to defend the city, they naturally wanted to have fun. Faced with the soldiers guarding the city who had completely let themselves go, the rebel army was very unlucky. Although they had taken down many cities, they were also covered in dirt and suffered heavy losses. Just as the battle between the two sides became more and more intense, the netherworld, which had been silent for many years, finally moved. In the center of the netherworld in Fengdu City, the Ghost Emperor of Fengdu took out the ghost sealing roll and handed it to his trusted general. He asked him to lead the army to the exit of the netherworld and stick the roll on the gate of hell to accept the heroic spirits of the past and present. His subordinate received the order and led the army to the gate of hell in a grandiose manner. He then stuck the ghost sealing roll on the gate of hell. Whoosh, the ghost sealing roll opened wide and countless mysterious runes appeared. They reflected a faint cold light, causing the already cold and desolate netherworld to become even colder. Boom, in the next moment, monstrous Yin Qi spread out and surged out from the ghost sealing roll. It poured into the human world and in an instant, it spread across the entire primordial land. In an instant, thousands of ghosts sensed it and let out mournful ghost howls. They swept up gusts of Yin wind and swept towards the netherworld. These were all heroic spirits who had died in battle. Although they were dead, their fighting spirit was not extinguished. They had turned into indestructible heroic spirits that lingered in the world. Originally, when the murderous Qi on these heroic spirits was almost worn away, the investiture of the gods would descend and lead them into the heavenly realm, turning them into heavenly soldiers to guard the heavenly court. But now, with the appearance of the ghost sealing roll, after sensing the aura of these indestructible heroic spirits, it directly put these heroic spirits away and prepared to turn them into Yin soldiers to guard the Yin court. In other words, these indestructible heroic spirits had no fate with the investiture of the gods. Such a huge commotion caused by the ghost sealing roll naturally alarmed the saints on Mount Kunlun. What? What does the netherworld want to do? Opening their eyes, the 5 saints looked in the direction of the netherworld with gloomy eyes. With the addition of the ghost sealing roll, the power of the investiture of the gods would be stronger. At the same time, the saints would suffer more losses. This was because the names on the roll had to be filled with the lives of their disciples. The 5 saints were furious. They really wanted to kill the netherworld and tear the ghost sealing roll into pieces. Unfortunately, they couldn't. Even saints had to think about the overall situation. Now, with a great enemy outside, the 9 chaos demon gods swaggered in the chaos beyond the heavens. It was not the time to start a civil war. Otherwise, if anything went wrong, they would be the sinners of the primordial world. You're lucky to have come at the right time. We'll let you off this time. In the future, we'll settle the karma. The 5 saints looked coldly in the direction of the netherworld and withdrew their gazes. This time, they temporarily gave up on breaking into the netherworld to settle the score with the ghost emperor of Fengdu for the sake of the overall situation. However, this did not mean that this matter would be over just like that. The 5 saints were petty and very vengeful. There would be more trouble in the future. This matter was not over. Feng Zichen did not care about what the 5 saints thought at all. In fact, he could not even be bothered to care about the 3 rebel armies attacking and seizing territory, because there was no need. In his eyes, the various cultivation bases of the rebel armies were like children playing around. They were all under his control, so how could they attract his attention? Just as Feng Zichen had planned, the human army retreated in defeat, constantly losing territory and retreating. The 3 allied armies pressed forward step by step, attacking and seizing territory along the way, gradually forcing their way to the ancestral land of the human race. They won so easily that even the 3 rebel armies sensed that something was wrong. However, they had no choice. Even if they knew that it was a trap, they had to grit their teeth and step on it. At this time, there was no possibility of retreat. They could only grit their teeth and continue forward. Moreover, Taoist Dong Hua and the other 2 also vaguely understood what Feng Zichen's plan was. He was shrinking his strength and concentrating his main force in the ancestral land of the human race. Then he was preparing to kill the 3 of them in one fell swoop during the decisive battle, so as to reorganize the mountains and rivers and stabilize the world. This plan was very good, but how could the 3 of them let Feng Zichen have his way? Feng Zichen was accumulating strength, but the 3 of them were also accumulating strength. When they attacked the ancestral land of the human race, it was not certain who would be stronger. At this moment, there was still some time before the decisive battle. As long as they accumulated enough strength during this period of time, the scales of victory would tip in their favor. The 3 of them working together would not be unable to defeat the human emperor, right? The human emperor was powerful, and the 3 of them were natural allies. They agreed to work together to fight against the human emperor. After the human emperor fell, who among the 3 of them would rule the world would depend on their own abilities. Feng Zichen did not know what the 3 of them were thinking. If he knew, he would probably laugh his head off. Children, you are still too naive. Do you think that the ancestral land of the human race contains all of his strength? He was wrong, and he was gravely wrong. The human race in the ancestral land of the human race had never been Feng Zichen's trump card, nor was it his strongest power. The ancestral land of the human race was just the tip of the iceberg of Feng Zichen's strength. But even so, the 3 of them were forced to go all out. It was really sad. They thought that they had seen hope, but they did not know that at the end of that hope, there was endless despair hidden. Since the beginning of the war, almost every once in a while, there would be immortals who unfortunately died and their souls returned to the investiture of the gods. And these were only those who were qualified to return to the investiture of the gods. Those who were not qualified to be on the investiture of the gods died even more. In just a few decades, countless immortals had died. Red blood constantly flowed from the corpses of the immortals and gods, forming rivers of blood that dyed the primitive land red. Between heaven and earth, there was a smell of blood everywhere. Of course, because of the large-scale death of the immortals and gods, more and more origins returned to heaven and earth, and the spiritual chi between heaven and earth became more and more active and rich. If one could ignore the blood-stained mountains and rivers in a trance, one would think that a golden age had arrived. A golden age stained with blood. It was believed that when the calamity was over, heaven and earth would usher in a golden age of cultivation. This was what it meant to abolish and rebuild. However, Feng Zichen no longer paid attention to heaven and earth. Because at this moment, the attention of the great masters, including him and the saints, was no longer in the primitive world, but in the chaos outside the heavens. Chapter 784. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed. Countless primordial ferocious beasts began to attack the untainted land under the orders of the 9 chaos demon gods. After 100 years of gathering, the untainted land had recruited more than 3,000 Daluo Taoist priests to form a solid line of defense in front of the boundless starry sky to resist the invasion of the primordial ferocious beasts. To be honest, the untainted land had indeed declined. All the Daluo Taoist priests added up to only about 4,000. This number was only comparable to that of the demon clan at its peak. This decline was a little scary. It could not be ruled out that there were still some Daluo Taoist priests hiding in the untainted land and did not respond to the summons. But even if there were some Daluo Taoist priests hiding, how many could there be? Even if there were 1,000 of them. In total, there were only about 5,000 of them. This number of Daluo Taoist priests was undoubtedly much lower than the number of Daluo Taoist priests at its peak in the untainted land. Looking at the 4,000 Daluo Taoist priests in front of them, they were not happy at all. Instead, they felt that it was over. The untainted land was going downhill. In the long run, the cultivation environment would become more and more difficult. Under such circumstances, could the world still nurture a new Daluo Jinxian of the primordial chaos? Thinking of this, many great mediums could not help but be covered with a layer of haze in their hearts. As for those who had become Daluo Jinxian of the primordial chaos, although they were not worried, they were also in a bad mood. Looking at the primordial ferocious beasts, which numbered no less than 10,000 Taoist priests, and then looking at the less than 4,000 Daluo Taoist priests on their side, no one would be in a good mood. The gap was really too big. 4,000 against 10,000. No matter how he looked at it, he was bound to lose. He had to take some measures. Otherwise, it would be really troublesome if the primordial fierce beasts really rushed into the untainted land. According to the bet, any place that had been ravaged by innate stage ferocious beasts would become the territory of the chaos demon god. How could he allow others to sleep peacefully beside his bed? Just the thought of being neighbors with a chaos fiend god was enough to make one's scalp numb. None of the people present were willing to do so. Even Saint Jain, a descendant of chaos fiend god, was unwilling to be neighbors with chaos fiend god. In fact, compared to Feng Zichen and the rest, the two of them were even more hostile towards the chaos demon celestial. They were afraid. They were afraid that one day the chaos demon god would choose to devour them in order to recover his strength. As the descendants of the chaos demon god, their existence itself was the greatest tonic for the chaos demon god who gave birth to them. As long as he devoured them, he could plunder everything from them and recover a lot of his origin. Therefore, the two saints who were unwilling to work for other people, hated the chaos fiend gods so much that they couldn't wait for them to die. Looking at the innate stage ferocious beasts rushing over, everyone frowned subconsciously. They expected that there would be many innate stage ferocious beasts, but they didn't expect that there would be so few Daluo Taoist priests on their side. Therefore, they couldn't think of a solution at the moment. As for asking the great medium to take action, the chaos fiend god only sent innate stage ferocious beasts at the level of Taoist priests. His meaning was already very obvious. This battle stopped with the Daluo Taoist priests. The existences above were not allowed to intervene. Otherwise, this battle would evolve into an unprecedented war. Seeing that everyone really couldn't think of a solution, Feng Zichen frowned in the human emperor palace. After hesitating for a moment, he took the immortal dragon city from the territory of the human clan and placed it in the outer chaos, turning it into an invincible line of defense to help the Taoist priests protect the untainted land. Seeing this, even the 5 saints who were extremely dissatisfied with Feng Zichen couldn't help but lower their noble heads and thank Feng Zichen. Taoist Gaochen is so righteous that we are far inferior to you. Hearing this, Feng Zichen in the human emperor palace just curled his lips in disdain. Righteous or not, it was all bullshit. If he really wanted to thank him, why didn't he use practical actions to express his gratitude? For example, asking Taoist Dong Hua and Taoist Ziyun to surrender immediately? It was just a matter of saying something. Anyway, he didn't have to pay the price. It was just a gesture. How sincere could it be? As soon as the immortal dragon city appeared, the human clan Taoist priests among the 4,000 Taoist priests immediately sensed it. In a flash, they appeared above the immortal dragon city. As they moved, the cosmic light galaxy formation slowly unfolded and resonated with Zhoxing behind them, drawing in endless starlight and adding it to the immortal dragon city, raising its power to another level. Rumble, vast waves of energy erupted from the immortal dragon city, forming waves of ripples that swept forward like tides. In an instant, the ripples swept across and those connate ferocious beasts charging at the front were crushed into a mist of blood before they could even scream. Roar. After that, an earth-shattering dragon roar sounded. In the sky above the immortal dragon city, the immortal divine dragon reappeared. Its body was endless, like a high and mighty god overlooking everything. The immortal dragon city wasn't an offensive magic treasure. It was a defensive magic treasure. The more people who used it, the more power it could unleash. With the support of the immortal dragon city, the defense of the 4,000 Daluo Taoist priests would at least double. It was comparable to 8,000 Daluo Taoist priests. In this way, the possibility of everyone defending the eldritch world was greatly increased. Roar, the death of their own kind didn't cause any fear in the Khanate ferocious beasts. On the contrary, under the stimulation of fresh blood, the remaining Khanate ferocious beasts' ferocity seemed to have been stimulated. They all entered a frenzied state and fearlessly attacked the immortal dragon city. Above the immortal dragon city, the Taoist priests didn't hold back when they saw the Khanate ferocious beasts attacking. Those with power gathered together, such as the human clan, the sorcerer clan, the demon clan, and the Khanate clan, and formed their own formations to fight against the ferocious beasts. As for those without power, they used the immortal dragon city as a defense. They activated their natal magic treasures and attacked the Khanate ferocious beasts from afar. Regardless of whether they had power or not, everyone was silently using their own methods to protect the eldritch world that gave birth to them. An earth-shattering battle was about to begin. With such a great disparity in power, Feng Zichen, Zhuanti, and the others didn't want to capture the Khanate ferocious beasts alive. Now they only wanted their subordinates to do their best to kill the Khanate ferocious beasts. They couldn't let them take half a step into the eldritch world. As soon as the battle began, it entered its most intense moment. Both sides used all their strength to kill each other. All kinds of magical treasures danced in the chaos, reflecting all kinds of light. It was gorgeous and moving. In a moment, the chaos beyond the heavens was dyed with blood. The torn flesh of the Khanate ferocious beasts and the remains of magical treasures were everywhere. The roaming chaos chi was gradually dyed with a layer of blood. The battle became more and more intense. Right at this moment, blood-colored altars appeared one after another silently. Hidden within the chaos chi, they continued to devour the flesh and blood around them. That was the blood altar. It was also where Feng Zichen thought they would win this battle. Once the blood altar devoured enough flesh and blood to purify, the Daluo Taoist priests of the human clan would be immortal like a saint. Then the battle would be much simpler. They would just have to see who couldn't hold on first. Whoever couldn't hold on first would be the loser. The one who could hold on would win the final victory. Those creatures of the eldritch world are interesting. They actually agreed to our suggestion. Don't they know that those Khanate ferocious beasts are endless to us? In the deepest part of the chaos beyond the heavens, the 9 chaos demon gods hiding here were laughing and discussing. They didn't care about the consumption of the Khanate ferocious beasts at all. That was because they could easily create Khanate ferocious beasts. Even the Khanate ferocious beasts at the level of the Daluo Taoist priests were the same. The chaos demon gods living in the chaos beyond the heavens could create tens of thousands of Khanate ferocious beasts with just one arm, and they were all at the level of the Daluo Taoist priests. If they added in natural treasures like the Chaos Divine Stone, the number would be several times higher. Would the chaos demon gods living in the chaos beyond the heavens lack treasures like the Chaos Divine Stone? Of course not. After living in the chaos beyond the heavens for so many years, these chaos demon gods didn't waste their time. Other than healing in seclusion, they spent the rest of their time collecting all kinds of magic treasures. After all, they weren't the only ones injured in the battle of splitting open the heavens. Their chaos spiritual treasures were also injured. They needed to devour all kinds of chaos divine objects. It was much easier for the chaos demon gods to find chaos divine objects in the chaos beyond the heavens than for Feng Zichen. After all, the chaos demon gods were also known as the sons of chaos. Wasn't it easy to find chaos divine objects? Because of this, the chaos demon gods all had a large number of chaos divine objects in their hands. This meant that as long as they were willing, they could create a large number of high-level Khanate ferocious beasts through the chaos divine objects with just a little bit of their origin. The number of chaos divine objects they could create depended on how many chaos divine objects they had. In that case, these Khanate ferocious beasts wouldn't be few. The 9 chaos demon gods probably weren't exaggerating when they said that there would be an endless supply. This time the wilderness was really in danger. Dao ancestor Hongjuan's decision was a little hasty. But was that really the case? Would the cunning and resourceful Dao ancestor Hongjun really be schemed against by others? Time flew like an arrow and the sun and moon shuttled back and forth. In the blink of an eye, several years had passed. The battle in the chaos beyond the heavens was becoming more and more intense. At this moment, not only had the Khanate ferocious beasts suffered heavy casualties, but the wilderness had also seen blood. Huge cracks had appeared on the immortal dragon city. Although the immortal power was constantly repairing the cracks, the speed at which the cracks were expanding was far faster than the speed at which the immortal power was repairing it. This also caused the cracks on the immortal dragon city to be difficult to repair. The cracks on the immortal dragon city also indicated that there was a flaw in its invincible defense. Through these flaws, the Khanate ferocious beasts' attacks surged in like tidal waves, bringing great pressure to the wilderness Taoist priests. Gradually, Taoist priests were injured, and then Taoist priests were gradually unable to withstand the attacks. They were torn apart by the violent super skills, and their blood splattered everywhere. With the first Taoist priest falling, there would be a second, a third, and a fourth. Soon, dozens of Taoist priests had fallen. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, the wilderness tribes immediately took on the responsibilities that they should have. The wilderness tribes led by the human tribe, including the demon tribe, the sorcerer tribe, and the Khanate tribe, stepped forward bravely and blocked the immortal dragon city's flaws, facing the most dangerous situation directly. With the help of the human tribe and the other tribes, the pressure on the itinerant cultivators and the small tribes was greatly reduced. However, the pressure on the tribes multiplied. Especially the human tribe, they were facing the greatest pressure. Among the more than 4,000 Khanate Taoist priests present, the human tribe Taoist priests were the most numerous, but they weren't the strongest. It wasn't because of their realms but because of their Dharma treasures. The human tribe Taoist priests were basically born after the Great War between the sorcerer tribe and the demon tribe, and missed the golden period of the wilderness. Most Taoist priests didn't have Khanate spiritual treasures. As for the other tribes such as the demon tribe, the sorcerer tribe, and the Khanate tribe, because they were born in the most glorious period of the wilderness, each of them had a Khanate spiritual treasure. On average, each of them had 2 Khanate spiritual treasures, let alone 1. This was the advantage of being born early, and the human tribe didn't enjoy it at all. But even so, the human tribe still gave birth to hundreds of Daluo Taoist priests. From this, it could be seen that Feng Zichen's means were powerful. In terms of cultivating experts, even Dao ancestor Hong Jun couldn't compare to Feng Zichen. An ordinary Khanate spiritual treasure could increase the strength of Daluo Taoist priests by at least 3 times. If it was a powerful Khanate spiritual treasure, it could increase their strength by several times. From this, it could be seen that Khanate spiritual treasures were important to Daluo Taoist priests. The human tribe Taoist priests were at a disadvantage because they didn't have Khanate spiritual treasures. As a result, even though they had the most Daluo Taoist priests, they weren't the strongest in terms of power. Similarly, without the help of Khanate spiritual treasures, the human tribe Taoist priests were also having a harder time than others when facing the attacks of Khanate ferocious beasts. In the distance, Great Emperor Ziwei's heart skipped a beat when he saw this scene. He wanted to rummage through his treasure vault to see if he could find some Khanate spiritual treasures to help the human tribe Taoist priest. However, before Great Emperor Ziwei could take action, Saint Taiching suddenly sighed and said, "Sigh, they are the heroes of the primordial heroes. Alas, they are all heroes who guard the untainted world. How can I bear to watch them fight barehanded? Let me do something for them." As he spoke, Saint Taiching waved his sleeve and took out dozens of Khanate spiritual treasures. He threw them at the human tribe Taoist priests. After him, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning also took out dozens of Khanate spiritual treasures expressionlessly and threw them to the human tribe Taoist priests. As for the Grand Master of Heaven, he had given away his treasures many times. No matter how rich he was about to run out. However, this time he gritted his teeth and took out more than 10 Khanate spiritual treasures without hesitation. Although there weren't many of these Khanate spiritual treasures and they were far less than the Khanate spiritual treasures that Saint Taiching and the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning had taken out, they won in terms of quality. Chapter 785. The Grand Master of Heaven's Khanate spiritual treasures were all superior grade Khanate spiritual treasures, except for a few. The Taiching Saint and the Primeval Lord of Heaven had taken out many Khanate spiritual treasures, but most of them were mid-grade and low-grade. In terms of value, they were not as valuable as the Grand Master of Heaven's Khanate spiritual treasures. It was no wonder that the Grand Master of Heaven felt the pinch. He had really lost a lot of money this time. The 3 pure ones had taken out a total of 180 Khanate spiritual treasures. With the help of these treasures, the Khanate Dao Masters of the human race would have at least 1 Khanate spiritual treasure each. However, this was not the end. Amidst the chaos, a ray of light suddenly flashed. It covered the sky and covered the entire immortal dragon city. Then, hundreds of Khanate spiritual treasures fell like raindrops, falling into the hands of the Khanate Taoist priests who did not have any Khanate spiritual treasures. Hundreds of Khanate spiritual treasures were distributed without even blinking. Only Tao ancestor Hongjun could do this in the Eldritch world. It was the old man himself who had given a Khanate spirit treasure to those Khanate Tao masters who did not have one. In this way, everyone had a Khanate spiritual treasure. Apart from that, a ball of Shenhuang origin fell and floated above the immortal dragon city, releasing endless Shenhuang creation chi to heal the injured Khanate Taoist priests. With the help of Tao ancestor Hongjun, the Eldritch world's tiredness was swept away, and they once again faced the Khanate ferocious beasts in peak condition. Endless Abhijna turned into divine light, and in the blink of an eye, dozens of Khanate ferocious beasts at the level of Taoist priests were killed. However, it was useless. The Khanate ferocious beasts seemed to be endless. No matter how many Khanate Taoist priests were killed, there was no sign of them decreasing. In fact, there were more and more of them. They could not be killed. The chaos around them had been dyed red, but the Khanate ferocious beasts were still endless. Gradually, the Khanate Taoist priests who had returned to their peak after absorbing the Shenhuang creation chi were exhausted again, and a trace of fatigue appeared on their faces. Why were there so many Xiantian ferocious beasts? The answer was in the depths of the chaos, where the chaos fiend god was hiding. There were 9 huge placentas throbbing continuously as if they were breathing. Every time they throbbed, large amounts of chaotic chi would be devoured. Then, with a flash of chaotic divine light, a large number of primordial ferocious beasts were born from the 9 placentas. They roared and rushed towards the untainted land. It was because of these 9 placentas that they were constantly producing primordial ferocious beasts. That was why they could not kill all of them and constantly attack the untainted land. If he did not destroy the 9 chaos placentas, the primordial world would definitely lose this battle. At this moment, although the untainted world gradually realized that something was wrong, they had yet to determine the real reason for all this. They could only try their best to strengthen the strength of their Xiantian Taoist priests, so that they could resist the attack of the Xiantian beasts. However, as time went by, the gap between the enemies and themselves became wider and wider. Gradually, the Xiantian Taoist priests showed signs of being injured again. Fortunately, with the Shenhuang origin, those injured Xiantian Taoist priests could be saved in time. However, although the chaotic chi was endless, the Shenhuang origin was not. When the Shenhuang origin was exhausted, it would be inevitable that the untainted land would suffer casualties. Alas! In the human emperor palace, Feng Zichen sighed heavily. Seeing the actions of the 3 pure ones, he could not help but feel ashamed. In order to protect the untainted land, the 3 pure ones could put aside their prejudices to help the human tribe. Why did he still have prejudice? Could it be that he was not as good as the 3 pure ones? Thinking of this, Feng Zichen no longer hesitated. He gradually activated the blood altar and began to collect the chi of the Xiantian Taoist priests in the untainted land as the basis for their resurrection. Fellow Taoists, don't resist. At the same time, Feng Zichen did not forget to secretly transmit a message to the Taoist priests in the immortal dragon city, informing them of the function of the blood altar and telling them not to resist the power of the blood altar. After knowing the existence of the blood altar and its function, the Xiantian Taoist priests in the immortal dragon city were naturally overjoyed. With the existence of this treasure, they did not have to fear death and could be resurrected at any time. With a backup plan, the Xiantian Taoist priests no longer had any scruples. They fought fiercely with the Xiantian beasts without fear of death. Anyway, they would not die. Who was afraid of who? The 3 pure ones and the others could not help but have a strange expression when they learned that Feng Zichen had such a treasure as the blood altar. Since the blood altar could resurrect the dead, who had Feng Zichen used it to resurrect over the years? Based on this, Feng Zichen had a terrifying power in his hands. These doubts filled the minds of the people, causing their fear of Feng Zichen to rise to another level. However, at this moment, it was more important to pay attention to the battle ahead. At this moment, they did not have the time to investigate what Feng Zichen had done with the blood altar all these years. These things could only be buried in the bottom of their hearts for the time being. They would deal with it after defeating the Chaos Demon God. With the blood altar, the Xiantian Taoist priests in the untainted world started to become fearless like the Xiantian beasts. For this reason, the battle became more and more intense. The flesh and blood of the Xiantian beasts were covered with chaos and tightly entangled with the chaotic chi, emitting a demonic bloody light. The blood altar was desperately devouring the flesh and blood of the Sciention beasts to transform it into the power needed to resurrect the Sciention Taoist priests. This was a virtuous cycle. The more Sciention Taoist priests killed the Sciention beasts, the more times they could be resurrected after they died, and the faster they could recover their power. At the same time, the three pure ones, the first origin of origin, and many powerful divines were not idle. They took out their treasures, including the Sciention origin filled with Taoist sense, Sciention divine materials shining with spiritual light, Sciention divine fruits with overwhelming spiritual qi, and so on. In short, there were all kinds of treasures. They were all Sciention treasures that could help people reach the sky in a single bound and contained amazing power. After taking out their treasures, these big shots did not hesitate to crush them into the purest origin of heaven and earth and pour it into the black-yellow origin to strengthen its power and continue to support the Sciention Taoist priests. On the other side, in the depths of the chaos beyond the sky, the purple cloud palace trembled violently and emitted endless divine light. It formed a huge black vortex around it and tried its best to devour the surrounding chaos chi. This was Taoist ancestor Hongjun's action. He urged the purple cloud palace to devour the chaos chi and transform it into the black-yellow origin. In the boundless starry sky, Zhoxing was also trembling. The Star River cosmic light formation was running automatically, absorbing the chaos chi from all directions and refining it into the purest Sciention origin. At this moment, all the powerful divines were doing their best to help the Sciention Taoist priests and help them guard the untainted land. Just like that, the minutes and seconds passed. In the Human Emperor Palace, Feng Zichen, who had pretended to be seriously injured and did not participate in the battle, was staring at the Sciention beasts with a serious face, trying to find the key to the problem. It was not Feng Zichen's style to pin his hopes on the Sciention Taoist priests. What a joke. Were they, the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, dead? The vast untainted land actually needed a group of Sciention Taoist priests to protect it. Wasn't that funny? The untainted land did not need the Sciention Taoist priests to protect it. At the very least, before the primordial chaos experts such as Feng Zichen, Three Pure Ones, and Tai died, it was not their turn to protect it. In the beginning, the untainted land was guarded by Taoist ancestor Hongjun. When Taoist ancestor Hongjun could not protect it, there were still Three Pure Ones, two sages of the West, Goddess Hutu Nuwa, Feng Zichen, Tai, and the others. After all these people fell, it was the turn of the Sciention Taoist priests. Now, everyone was still there and had not taken action. The untainted land was far from the time of life and death. It was not the turn of the Sciention Taoist priests to risk their lives. Now they did not look like they were risking their lives. If they were really at the critical moment of life and death, how could they be so leisurely and have so many great mediums to bless them? It was more appropriate to say that they were risking their lives than risking their lives. Moreover, it was not Feng Zichen's style to pin his hopes on others. It was believed that not only Feng Zichen thought so, but also the rest of the people. However, unlike Feng Zichen, Three Pure Ones and the other 8 people had been exposed to the sight of the Chaos Demon Gods. They had been stared at by them all the time. Even if they had some ideas, it was not easy for them to take action. However, Feng Zichen was different. In the eyes of everyone, he was now in a state of serious injury and dying. Therefore, he did not participate in this battle. The Chaos Demon Gods did not pay attention to him. And this gave Feng Zichen a chance to take action secretly. Quietly, Feng Zichen left the Human Emperor Palace and came to the chaos beyond the sky. After looking around and making sure that no one was paying attention to him, Feng Zichen quietly disappeared and traced the direction of the innate ferocious beasts. With Feng Zichen's speed, even in the chaos, he could travel hundreds of millions of miles in the blink of an eye. It was meaningless to surpass the speed of light. This was because any concept would become blurry under his power, and everything would have to follow the rules that he had set. Therefore, Feng Zichen soon came to the source of the innate ferocious beasts, where the 9 chaos placentas were. I see. No wonder the innate ferocious beasts can't be killed. The roots are all here. Looking at the 9 chaos placentas in front of him that were continuously creating innate ferocious beasts, Feng Zichen's eyes could not help but flash with a wisp of light. What was a treasure? This was it. As long as he could get his hands on the chaos placentas, why would he need to capture innate ferocious beasts alive? Couldn't he just create them with this thing? By then he could have as many innate ferocious beasts as he wanted. Wouldn't that be invincible? However, looking at the 9 chaos demon gods standing behind the 9 chaos placentas, Feng Zichen forcibly suppressed his thoughts. It was better not to act rashly and alert the enemy. Otherwise it would be difficult to obtain these chaos placentas. Silently remembering everything here, Feng Zichen quietly left. However, he did not return to the human emperor palace. Instead, he quietly came to the side of the 9 people. Fellow Taoists, look! Hiding in the dark, Feng Zichen transmitted the images he had seen in the depths of the chaos to the 9 people through divine thought. Suddenly receiving Feng Zichen's message, the 9 people were surprised, but they did not show it on their faces. They pretended as if nothing had happened and watched all the images he sent. No wonder those innate ferocious beasts can't be killed. It turns out that these 9 chaos placentas are continuously creating innate ferocious beasts. The chaos demon god's methods are really impressive. He can actually create innate Taoist priests in batches, as expected of someone who once competed with Father God. After watching the images sent by Feng Zichen, everyone sighed in their hearts. Then, the Grand Pure One sent a voice transmission to Feng Zichen expressionlessly. Since Taoist Gaochen has discovered the problem, what should we do? Just as the Grand Pure One was sending a voice transmission, an inexplicable force descended in the void, forming a strange world. Each of them pinched a trace of divine thought of the 10 people. In the strange world, an extraordinary figure sat cross-legged in the middle. As soon as the divine thought incarnations of the 10 people arrived, they immediately bowed to the figure and said, "Greetings, Tao Ancestor." This world was condensed by the Tao Ancestor with the power of the heavenly Tao. It was used for communication and could definitely hide from the chaos demon god's senses. Waving his hand to get everyone to stand up, Tao Ancestor Hongjun asked, "Everyone has already seen through the conspiracy of the chaos demon god. What should we do?" As soon as Tao Ancestor finished speaking, Tai immediately replied resolutely, "Kill them. Kill the 9 chaos demon gods as quickly as possible. Only in this way can we destroy their plan. Otherwise, with the endless innate ferocious beasts, it will be very difficult for us to win this battle." After Tai finished speaking, the others did not say anything, but judging from their expressions they obviously agreed with his words. Now, killing the chaos demon god was indeed the best way. However, since they wanted to kill the chaos demon god, they had to face a realistic problem. That was, the chaos demon god was now watching them closely. Once they took action, the chaos demon god would definitely be alerted. In that case, it would not be so easy to kill the chaos demon god. Only by catching them off guard could they possibly kill the chaos demon god. If they were prepared, it would be easy to defeat them, but it would be difficult to kill them. If they could not kill the chaos demon god, they would be in big trouble. For a moment, everyone was a little hesitant, not knowing if they should carry out the plan to kill the leader. Fortunately, they were all decisive people. After weighing the pros and cons for a short while, they made a decision in their hearts. Tai took out the Bell of Chaos and handed it to Feng Zichen. He said, "Now that you are out of the sight of the chaos demon god, I'll have to trouble you to bring my Dharma treasure to the chaos demon god." Chapter 786. After receiving the Bell of Chaos, Feng Zichen roughly understood what Donghuang Tai meant. Due to the Chaos Fiend's celestial surveillance, Tai could not go to the depths of the chaos to avoid alerting the enemy. However, he could let Feng Zichen, who was not in the Chaos Fiend Celestial's sight, bring his Dharma treasures to the Chaos Fiend Celestial. At their level of strength, their Dharma treasures had basically been refined to the point where they were indistinguishable from themselves. Therefore, taking the Bell of Chaos to the depths of the chaos was basically the same as taking Donghuang Tai to the depths of the chaos. Once the war broke out, Donghuang Tai could use the Bell of Chaos to cross the endless chaos and directly come to the vicinity of the Bell of Chaos. In this way he could catch the Chaos Fiend Celestial off guard. After Donghuang Tai, the rest of the people, such as the 3 pure ones, gave Feng Zichen the Taiji diagram, the Pangu banner, and the Khanate Dharma treasures, the 4 immortal slaying swords. The 2 saints of the West gave Feng Zichen the supreme grade Khanate Merit Numinous treasures, the Eastern Cyan treasured Lotus flag, and the 12th grade Golden Lotus of Merit. Nuwa, Goddess Hutu, and Great Emperor Ziwei gave Feng Zichen the Khanate supreme treasures, the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth, the Disc of 6 Paths of Reincarnation, and the Khanate supreme treasure, the Zhoxing diagram. Even Tao Ancestor Hongjun took out the god-slaying spear with a smile and gave it to Feng Zichen, asking him to take it to the depths of the Chaos Fiend Celestial. Looking at the 7 or 8 Khanate supreme treasures in front of him, Feng Zichen was speechless. Unfortunately, these treasures were not for him, but for him to take them to the depths of the Chaos Fiend Celestial to be a courier. Otherwise, with these Khanate supreme treasures in his hand, Feng Zichen would be invincible in the primitive world. Gaochen will definitely not disappoint you, fellow Taoists. Forcibly suppressing the greed in his heart, Feng Zichen waved his sleeve and put away the Khanate supreme treasures. Then he left the spiritual space and went to the depths of the Chaos Fiend Celestial. He had no choice but to suppress his evil thoughts. Since everyone was so confident in handing over their treasures to Feng Zichen, it was obvious that they all had a backup plan and were not afraid that he would secretly tamper with them. If Feng Zichen really attacked these Khanate supreme treasures, they might be activated at the same time and attack him together. TSK. At such a close distance, Feng Zichen would not be able to withstand the simultaneous attacks of at least 5 primordial cardinal treasures. This was because there was a backup plan left behind by Dao Ancestor Hongjun. Carrying those pre-world supreme treasures, Feng Zichen carefully concealed himself and approached the 9 chaos placentas. Feng Zichen quietly poked his head out to take a look. He discovered that the 9 chaos fiends celestials were guarding the chaos placenta one by one, and could not find a chance to attack. After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen gave up the idea of placing the Khanate supreme treasures beside the chaos placenta. Instead, he retreated to the side and began to set up. Feng Zichen first took out the god-killing spear, the Dharma treasure given to him by Dao Ancestor Hongjun. Speaking of the god-killing spear, Feng Zichen could not help but feel a little angry. This was the #1 killing supreme treasure in the untainted land. He and Haotian had joined forces and risked their lives to snatch it from demon ancestor Rahu and suppressed it in the Purple Cloud Palace. However, Dao Ancestor Hongjun did not say a word after obtaining this supreme treasure. He did not even give him and Haotian any compensation. Well, Dao Ancestor Hongjun was quite fair in this regard. He did not give Feng Zichen, an outsider, nor did he give Haotian, one of his own, any benefits. He was black-hearted. A Khanate supreme treasure was black-hearted without any compensation. No wonder he could become a Dao ancestor. Feng Zichen still needed some time to practice his shamelessness. Feng Zichen muttered as he took out the god-killing spear. Then he spent some effort to disturb the back of the Chaos Demon Celestial and placed the god-killing spear there. This was the west side of the 9 Chaos Demon Celestial, which was the back of the Chaos Demon Celestial. Feng Zichen placed the god-killing spear there for a reason. Dao Ancestor Hongjun was the strongest combat power on his side. Once he made a move, he had to achieve the effect of changing the situation with one blow. Therefore, it was obviously not appropriate to let Dao Ancestor Hongjun make a move directly. Only by putting him at the back and attacking the Chaos Demon Celestial could he achieve the greatest result. Moreover, if the 3 Pure Ones or Feng Zichen, Tai Yi and the others made a move, the Chaos Demon Celestial would definitely disdain to escape. Even if he was no match for them, he would fight with them before leaving. However, if Dao Ancestor Hongjun were to make a move, the 9 Chaos Demon Celestial would probably escape without thinking. Wasn't it courting death to fight with Dao Ancestor Hongjun in the untainted world? Moreover, although Dao Ancestor Hongjun did not say it explicitly, Feng Zichen could still feel that the Dao Ancestor Hongjun who had communicated with them previously was not his true body, but just an incarnation. Why did Feng Zichen have such a feeling? Because the aura of the Dao Ancestor was not right. In the past, when Feng Zichen saw Dao Ancestor Hongjun, he would feel an irresistible pressure from him. However, this time, although he also felt pressure from Dao Ancestor Hongjun, it was far less than before. The feeling that the Dao Ancestor gave him was not like Daluo Jingxian, but more like primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Therefore, Feng Zichen concluded that the Dao Ancestor was definitely not Dao Ancestor Hongjun's true body, but his incarnation. His strength was probably at the peak of primordial chaos, between the 10th and 12th level. As for where was Dao Ancestor Hongjun's true body? According to Feng Zichen's deduction, he should have been blocked by the powerful Chaos Demon Celestial. Otherwise, it was impossible for Dao Ancestor Hongjun to not appear in person for such a big matter. If Dao Ancestor Hongjun's true body had really come, there would be no need to scheme. With a slap, he would be able to seriously injure the 9 Chaos Demon Celestial, even if he did not completely destroy them. Therefore, what appeared in front of everyone was definitely not Dao Ancestor Hongjun's true body, but his incarnation. It was also because of this that no one suggested that Dao Ancestor Hongjun killed the 9 Chaos Demon Celestial when they were communicating just now. However, the Dao Ancestor did not come in person, but only in his incarnation. Even so, the strength of a peak primordial chaos expert was much stronger than them. Could be said to be a great killing weapon. Since it was a great killing weapon, it had to be used at the most critical moment. It was best to use it for a sneak attack. Just as Feng Zichen had guessed, at this moment, Dao Ancestor Hongjun was sitting cross-legged at the junction of the outer chaos and the outer chaos. He was looking at a white-robed and white-browed old man across the sky. The old man was the first primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian in the Untainted Land. He was one of the top 10 spiritual roots in the Untainted Land, the primordial hollow willow ancestor Yang Mei. At the same time, he was also a space demon celestial whose strength was enough to rank in the top 3 among the 3,000 chaos demon celestial. He could be said to be the top figure in the world, one of the strongest creatures under the Great Tao. Fortunately, ancestor Yang Mei's strength had not recovered to its peak state. Otherwise, if he wanted to destroy the Untainted Land, no one in the Untainted Land could stop him, unless Pangu came back to life. Even so, Tao ancestor Hongjun had to be careful when ancestor Yang Mei came to the outer chaos in person. He abandoned everything and came in front of him. In the face of such a figure, it was not too much to be cautious. Because Tao ancestor Hongjun knew that without the help of the Great Tao, he was no match for Yang Mei. This had long been verified. Brother Yang Mei, didn't you go to the depths of the chaos to comprehend the Great Tao? Why do you still come to the mortal world and intervene in the battle between the Chaos Demon Celestial and the Untainted Land? Tao ancestor Hongjun looked at ancestor Yang Mei and asked in confusion. He was indeed puzzled. When they parted in the chaos last time, ancestor Yang Mei had already said that he had settled the karma between him and the Untainted Land. He would go to the depths of the chaos to cultivate and not care about the affairs of the world. But this time, why did he come out again? Did he change his mind and plan to participate in the battle between the Chaos Demon Celestial and the Untainted Land? Tao ancestor Hongjun could not help but worry about this. Ancestor Yang Mei was too strong. He was an eternal existence with qualifications. His strength was enough to affect the balance between the two sides. Therefore his attitude was very important. On the opposite side, ancestor Yang Mei was silent for a while before he replied, "I have to come." Ancestor Yang Mei was also very helpless. In order not to get involved in the mess between the Chaos Demon Celestial and the Untainted Land, he hid in the deepest part of the chaos. But unfortunately he did not hide deep enough and was found by the Chaos Demon Celestial. Ancestor Yang Mei found it hard to refuse the pleading of his former companions. Therefore he appeared here. But whether ancestor Yang Mei came here because he could not resist the pleading of the Chaos Demon Celestial as he said or because of something else, it was not something that outsiders could know. Alas! Tao ancestor Hongjun sighed helplessly opposite ancestor Yang Mei. No matter what the reason was, as long as he was here, he could not leave this place. Whether the Untainted Land could survive this disaster depended on Feng Zichen and the others. After putting away the god-slaying spear, Feng Zichen went to the northwest of the 9 Chaos Demon Celestial and put the cauldron of heaven and earth there. Well, Goddess Nuwa will attack the Chaos Demon Celestial from the northwest. After the northwest, it was the north. Feng Zichen put the Bell of Chaos there and let Dong Huangtai attack the Chaos Demon Celestial from the north. After that, it was the northeast. Feng Zichen put the 4 immortal slaying swords there and let Tong Tian attack the Chaos Demon Celestial from there. Next, it was the east, the most dangerous place, right in front of the Chaos Demon Celestial. Attacking the Chaos Demon Celestial from there would undoubtedly be the greatest pressure. Therefore, Feng Zichen put the Taiching Sage, the leader of the saints, in charge of this place and left the Taiji painting, the ultimate treasure of creation. The reason was very simple. Among the 10 primordial chaos experts, the Taiching Sage was the strongest. That was the most dangerous place. Who else could take it? The greater the power, the greater the responsibility. In the southeast, Feng Zichen left the Pangu banner and handed it to Heavenly Lord Yuanshi. In the south, Feng Zichen left the Zhouxing painting and handed it to Great Emperor Ziwei. In the southwest, Feng Zichen left the 12th grade Virtuous Golden Lotus and handed it to Saint Juan Ti. Above the Chaos Demon Celestial, Feng Zichen left the mark of the 6 paths of reincarnation disc of the Chaos Supreme Treasure and let Goddess Hudu attack from there. Below, Feng Zichen left the Eastern Cyan Treasured Lotus flag and handed it to Saint Juanin. In this way, there were people in charge of the 10 directions of the 9 Chaos Demon Celestial. The 10 of them joined forces and completely blocked their escape route and also sealed their vitality. As long as everyone acted fast enough, there was no possibility of letting the Chaos Demon Celestial escape. This was called ambushing from all directions and cutting off all vitality. As for Feng Zichen himself, he silently came to the side of the Zhouxing painting and planned to join forces with Great Emperor Ziwei to summon the Pangadharma form and launch the strongest attack. After arranging everything, Feng Zichen calculated the right time and suddenly activated the 10 supreme treasures. In an instant, there was a burst of brilliance in the chaos, and 9 dazzling divine lights rose. Within the divine lights, 10 supreme treasures with immense power rose slowly, surrounded by endless Taoist rhymes. Boom! Almost at the same time, the 10 supreme treasures were activated and launched their strongest attack toward the 9 chaos demons celestial who were surrounded in the middle. Boom! Boom! Under this unparalleled power, the chaos was collapsing, and the great Tao was becoming blurry. Concepts were also changing and everything was being distorted. A will of certain death rippled and wrapped around the 9 chaos demons celestial as if it was announcing their end. The moment the 10 supreme treasures were activated, the 9 chaos demons celestial knew something was wrong. They did not have the thought of fighting back. Their first thought was to escape. The other party had obviously come prepared, and it was unwise to rashly start a war with them. It was better to preserve their useful bodies and wait for the future. Unfortunately, Feng Zichen was fully prepared this time and would definitely not give them a chance to escape. While the 10 supreme treasures were attacking, their power was also condensing and linking with each other to form the Khanate 10 Directions formation. It sealed off all directions and blocked the escape route of the Chaos Demon Celestial. Since they could not escape, they could only fight back. The 9 Chaos Demon Celestial reacted quickly. Seeing that they could not escape, they immediately joined forces and activated their special ability to summon the will of chaos to resist the attack. Boom! In the boundless aura, a mighty will emerged and easily blocked the joint attack of the 10 supreme treasures. However, before the 9 Chaos Demon Celestial had a chance to escape, the second attack came. Whoosh! 10 rays of divine light flashed, and Tao Ancestor Hongjun and the other 9 crossed the endless chaos. Each of them activated their own treasures and charged toward the Chaos Demon Celestial. Boom! After the attack, a terrifying wave erupted and destroyed all the chaos in the surroundings. 5 of the 9 chaos placentas were directly destroyed. The newly born Khanate ferocious beast was directly turned into ashes. Cough cough. When all the waves subsided, the 9 chaos demons celestial gradually appeared. They had finally blocked the attack. However, they had also paid a huge price for this. The summoned will of chaos was shattered. In other words, their strongest defense was gone. At this moment, everyone had accumulated their power and counterattacked with the third and final attack. It was a sure kill attack. Whoosh! A ray of light flashed, and Feng Zichen and Great Emperor Ziwei merged into one, summoning the Pangadharma form. On the other side, the 3 pure ones stood together and connected their auras. They evolved the Dharma form of the past, present, and future, and their power increased by more than 10 times. P.S. I still hope that the pirated readers can support me. You can read the advertisement for free. It's available at the end of every chapter. It's free. In addition, I'm asking for next month's votes. I still hope to collect 100 monthly votes this month. Chapter 787. Behind the 9 Chaos Demon Gods, where Tao Ancestor Hongjun was, his avatar suddenly began to burn. In the blink of an eye, it turned into an extremely powerful force that poured into the god-slaying spear in his hand. Boom! At this moment, the god-slaying spear's body emitted an unprecedented light, and a shocking murderous aura spread out. Even people as strong as Feng Zichen and the others felt their souls tremble. It was said that primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian was immortal and indestructible, but in front of the god-slaying spear, everyone felt the taste of death, as if the god-slaying spear could kill them completely. Or maybe it was just an illusion. No matter what, the god-slaying spear was extremely powerful now. Perhaps it did not have the power to kill primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian completely, but it could definitely kill primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian easily. Otherwise, the god-slaying spear would not have given everyone such a feeling. In the other directions, Tai, Hutu, Nuwa, and the others also revealed their trump cards and launched their strongest attacks toward the 9 chaos demon gods. Boom! The first to attack was the 3 pure ones. The 3 kinds of power that represented the essence of the universe surged out of their bodies and swept toward the 9 chaos demon gods. Rumble. The power of primordial chaos erupted, and in an instant the entire process of the universe's birth and death was derived. The power of the universe's creation and the power of the universe's end were like monstrous waves, vast and mighty, hitting the 9 chaos demon gods. In just an instant all their defenses were destroyed. At this moment, Feng Zichen and Great Emperor Ziwei joined forces to attack. The immortal light of Pangu erupted from their bodies and tore the bodies of the 9 chaos demon gods apart, causing their blood to splatter in the chaos. Clang! After Feng Zichen and Great Emperor Ziwei attacked, the Bell of Chaos, the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth, the 6 paths of Reincarnation Disc, the 12th grade virtuous golden lotus, and the Eastern Cyan treasured lotus flag, 5 powerful supreme treasures, attacked at the same time. Rumble, an unimaginable power erupted, shattering everything into nothingness. After suffering such a heavy blow, the Chaos Demon God, whose physical body had already been torn apart, was completely shattered and exploded. He turned into countless pieces of broken bones and flesh that scattered in the chaos beyond the sky. Even so, the 9 Chaos Demon Gods were still alive. No, it should be said that such an attack could only severely injure them, but it would not harm their foundation. This was because after reaching the level of the Daluo Taoist priests, although the physical body was still important, it was no longer the foundation. Innate indestructible true spirit was the foundation of everything. As long as the innate indestructible true spirit was fine, no matter how serious the injury, it would be able to recover in the shortest time possible. At this moment, the chaos indestructible true spirits of the 9 Chaos Demon Gods were hidden in their broken flesh. It could be a drop of blood, a piece of bone, or even a piece of flesh. In short, they were waiting for an opportunity to escape when no one was paying attention. The bodies of the Chaos Demon Gods were unbelievably huge, more than hundreds of millions of feet long. After they were shattered, they turned into countless pieces of flesh and broken bones. It was easy to imagine how difficult it would be to find the true spirits of the 9 Chaos Demon Gods hidden in these fragments. However, there was no need for them to search, because the fatal blow from their side had arrived. An astonishing blood-red light bloomed from the god-slaying spear, illuminating the past, the present, and the future. Whoosh, with a flash of blood-red light, the chaos suddenly disintegrated, and everything returned to nothingness in an instant. The god-slaying spear had already arrived beside the broken bodies of the 9 Chaos Demon Gods with unparalleled killing power. Whoosh, hundreds of millions of blood-red light bloomed from the god-slaying spear and swept out. In an instant, it shrouded the place and turned it into a blood-red world. The incarnation of Tao ancestor Hongjun, a peerless expert of the 11th heaven of Hunyuan realm, had sacrificed his own body to the god-slaying spear in exchange for the spear. The moment the blood-red light burst out, Feng Zichen and the others quickly retreated to the side, for fear that they would be affected by the slightest bit of the blood-red light. After a while, the blood-red light faded, and the chaos gradually returned to normal. The power of the god-slaying spear had been exhausted, and it was lying quietly in the chaos beyond the heavens. The flesh and blood of the 9 Chaos Demon Gods had not been destroyed. They still existed there, emitting astonishing waves of energy. However, the spirituality contained in their flesh and blood had completely disappeared. Obviously, the attack of the god-slaying spear had completely destroyed the true spirits of the 9 Chaos Demon Gods. Good stuff. Looking at the floating mass of Chaos Demon Gods' flesh and blood, everyone was very tempted. This was good stuff. If it was done properly, it would not be difficult to refine a few Khanate cardinal treasures. However, no one dared to take the Chaos Demon Gods' flesh. Although they were tempted, no one dared to take it. This was because the flesh and blood of the Chaos Demon Gods already had a use. Rumble. At this moment, in the depths of the chaos, in the unknown void, there was a burst of supreme Tao light. It was purple and lustrous, full of nobility and majesty. Following this, a Tao wheel with a missing corner slowly descended from the sky. In an instant, the chaos shook and a supreme pressure spread out. It was cold and noble, like Mount Buzhou pressing down on everyone's hearts, making it hard for them to breathe. Greetings to the heavenly way. Seeing the Tao wheel with a missing corner descend, everyone bowed slightly and greeted it. The heavenly way. The missing corner of the Tao wheel was the heavenly way. It had descended for the first time in a true sense. The Tao wheel was the body of the heavenly way. As for why it was missing a corner, it meant that the heavenly way was incomplete and incomplete. The missing corner was the escaped one, the opportunity for all living beings to transcend. Without the escaped one, the heavenly way would be perfect, and all living beings in the eldritch world would be under the rule of the heavenly way. This was a very terrifying thing because it meant that from the moment of one's birth, one's future, one's achievements, and one's death had all been decided by the heavenly Tao. Everything would go according to the script that the heavenly way had planned for them. Life after life, there would never be a chance to transcend. Pengu was merciful and did not want to see this scene. At the beginning of the creation of the world, he gave the heavenly way an axe, making it no longer perfect in the escaped one. It was the escaped one that gave all living beings a chance to transcend. If not, the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian would not have been born in the eldritch world. The primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian was a transcendent. He had transcended the river of destiny, the river of time and space, and the eldritch world. He was the existence that the heavenly way did not want to see the most. After the heavenly way descended, it did not look at the crowd and only looked at the flesh and blood of the chaos demon gods. At the moment, the flesh and blood of the 9 chaos demon gods were the most important to the heavenly way. As long as it devoured them and absorbed their origins, it would definitely bring unimaginable benefits to the eldritch world. It was not impossible to restore the glory of the ancient times. Compared to the glorious future of the eldritch world, Feng Zichen and the other 8 people around the heavenly way seemed insignificant. After looking up and down at the flesh and blood of the chaos demon gods, the heavenly way suddenly rotated and an extremely powerful suction force was emitted. It wrapped the flesh and blood of the chaos demon gods and brought them into the Tao wheel of the heavenly way. Meanwhile, Feng Zichen and the rest were quietly watching the scene. The reason why they did not touch the flesh and blood of the chaos demon gods was that they knew that the flesh and blood had been reserved by the heavenly way. If they dared to snatch food from the tiger's mouth, the heavenly way would not mind telling them what the ruler of the eldritch world was. As for the fact that the heavenly way did not take them seriously, Feng Zichen and the others had long been used to it. The heavenly way was just a ruthless program. Apart from the eldritch world, there was nothing else in its eyes. Any existence, whether strong or weak, was the same in its eyes. They were all ants. Even the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian was just a slightly stronger ant in the eyes of the heavenly way. In addition, wasn't it wrong to expect a program to treat you differently? If the heavenly way had its own preferences one day and suddenly favored Feng Zichen and the others, their first reaction would not be joy but fear. Good heavens, ruthless and desireless. If the fair and just heavenly way suddenly had its own preferences, wouldn't it be a bad thing? From then on, the order would no longer exist, and the eldritch world would not be far from destruction. In addition, the heavenly way would not allow this to happen. Although the heavenly way was subservient to the heavenly way, it could also check and balance the heavenly way. Once the heavenly way gave birth to intelligence, the heavenly way would be able to manifest and do its best to wipe out the intelligence of the heavenly way, thus maintaining the order of the eldritch world. While the heavenly way was devouring the flesh and blood of the chaos demon god, Feng Zichen and the others were not idle. They stared at the heavenly way and tried hard to brand its figure in their hearts. What a joke. It was the heavenly way, the combination of all the laws in the eldritch world. Its whole body was the truth of the heavenly way. Any rune on its body could evolve into a Khanate Dao scripture and create a Daluo Taoist priest. The body of the heavenly way was the greatest opportunity in the eldritch world. If one could completely comprehend it, not to mention the Wuji Daluo Jingxian, even the creation realm, which was above the Wuji realm, could be achieved. Now, the body of the heavenly way had come in person, which could be said to be the greatest opportunity in the eldritch world. Since everyone was fated to see it, they naturally tried their best to brand the figure of the heavenly way Tao wheel in their hearts. They remembered as much as they could, and they could not waste this opportunity. This opportunity was much more precious than the Tao ancestors' preaching. It was a pity that those powerful mediums in the eldritch world were not here now. Otherwise, if they were fated to see the heavenly way Tao wheel, they would not be far away from becoming the origin Daluo Jingxian. Alas, what a pity. In Feng Zichen's sea of consciousness, Hongmeng Daozhong vibrated rapidly, and the Hongmeng Qi surged crazily, constantly imitating the appearance of the heavenly way Tao wheel, trying to record everything about him. Just when Hongmeng Daozhong was branding the figure of the heavenly way Tao wheel, Feng Zichen suddenly woke up from his enlightenment. Then he quietly looked around. Seeing that the rest of the people were immersed in enlightenment, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then he carefully reached out his hand and grabbed at the only remaining embryo of chaos in the depths of the chaos beyond the heavens. It had to be said that Feng Zichen was lucky. At this point in the battle, even the real spirit of the chaos demon god was destroyed. But among the 9 chaos embryos, one was saved. Although Feng Zichen deliberately protected it, it was more due to luck. It had to be said that the chaos fruit was really Feng Zichen's blessed land. In the chaos, he could easily obtain benefits much easier than in the eldritch world. With the chaos embryo, he would not lack primordial ferocious beasts in the future. After looking at the chaos embryo for a while, Feng Zichen silently put it away. Then he transmitted a voice message to the Taoist priests of the human clan, ordering them to start capturing the primordial ferocious beasts alive. Without the chaos embryo, the primordial ferocious beasts could no longer become powerful, and it would undoubtedly be much easier for them to deal with them. This gave the Taoist priests of the human clan the possibility to capture the primordial ferocious beasts alive. After that, Feng Zichen took a look at the way of heaven. Seeing that it would not leave for a while, he notified the great mediums on his side. For example, the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, Ancestor Mingi, and the others quickly came here to see if they could get some opportunities. If they were fast enough, they might be able to see the way of heaven for the last time. This was undoubtedly a great benefit for them, who were about to break through and become Daluo Jinxian of the origin. Perhaps, the final step they were missing would be broken through because of this. Alas, the opportunity had been told to them. As for whether they could come or not, it would depend on their own luck. Feng Zichen had done his best. Next it was up to heaven. Just as Feng Zichen was observing the way of heaven in the chaos beyond the sky, the war in the Eldritch world was coming to an end. Daoist Donghua Daoist Ziyun, and God personally led the army and attacked all the way. Soon they reached the gate of the ancestral land of the human race. Here, the 3 of them who had been unstoppable all the way finally encountered an obstacle. It was an unprecedented obstacle. No matter how they attacked, they could not move forward at all. In fact, after several failed sieges, they suffered heavy losses instead. All the losses before added up were not as much as the losses they suffered here. The main forces of the human race were all gathered here, determined to fight to the death. How could the 3 rebel armies be a match for them? The so-called heavy losses were the result of the human race's side holding back. Otherwise, the human race's army could directly flatten the 3 rebel armies. However, the human race did not do so. They were waiting for the return of the Khanate Taoist priests, waiting for their majesty to give the order for the final battle. In this way they would take action and flatten the rebel armies in one fell swoop. Now, since His Majesty asked them to hold back, it was not a bad idea for them to stay here and play with the rebel armies. To be honest, these days of defending the city, the human race here had really opened their eyes. In order to break through the city as soon as possible, the 3 rebel armies had used all kinds of methods. All kinds of strange supernatural powers and capable people could be said to be endless. Those various methods made the human race here exclaim in joy. Chapter 788. He felt that he had never seen so many mysterious magical powers in his life. It was really an eye-opener. After a long battle, the 3 of them were anxious and even paid a huge price to invite capable people from all over to help them. Unfortunately, no matter how mysterious their magical powers were or how strange their magic treasures were, they could not cross the barrier formed by the power of all spirits. The power of all spirits was one of the few powers in this world that was born after birth but was superior to the innate. It was extremely mysterious. As long as there were enough of them, even the will of the heavenly Tao could be reversed, let alone other powers. After using all kinds of methods, they still could not break into the ancestral land of the human race. Daoist Donghua Daoist Purple Cloud, and Deity gritted their teeth and decided to take the risk. The 3 of them used their magical powers to wrap the destiny of the human race that they had accumulated over the years around their bodies and rushed toward the ancestral land of the human race. Over the years, the 3 of them had accumulated a lot of destiny of the human race along the way. Including the 20% that Saint Taiching had taken away, they had about 50% in total. Daoist Donghua and Daoist Purple Cloud each had 20%. While Deity had 10%. With the destiny of the human race on their bodies, the 3 of them suddenly became ethereal, as if they were in harmony with the heavenly Tao. They were everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Whoosh! The 3 of them moved and rushed toward the power of all spirits. They saw that the power of all spirits that had previously made the 3 rebel armies helpless like a heavenly canopy seemed to not exist in front of the 3 of them at this moment, allowing them to pass through it easily. The destiny of the human race trembled slightly, and the power of all spirits sensed it and automatically opened an opening for the 3 of them to pass through. The soldiers guarding the city did not notice anything unusual about what was happening here. This was normal. The 3 of them were saged to be experts, and with the support of the destiny of the human race, their strength had long reached the realm of great masters. As for the soldiers guarding the city, the highest cultivation level was only a half-step Zenith Heaven Tao Master. It would be strange if they could find the traces of Daoist Donghua and the other 2. After entering the ancestral land of the human clan, Daoist Donghua and the other 2 headed straight for the human emperor palace. They dared to attack the human emperor's palace not because they were brave, but because they had received news from their backers that Feng Zichen was not in the human emperor's palace. If that was not the case, they would not have dared to attack the human emperor's palace even if they had the guts to do so. Wouldn't that be suicide? It had been some time since the battle to kill the demon god of chaos, and the news should have been sent back. Therefore, it was not surprising that the three of them received news about Feng Zichen. After learning that Feng Zichen wasn't in the human emperor palace, the three of them immediately understood that this was an opportunity. It was a chance to completely conquer the human race. Gradually, an extremely bold idea appeared in the minds of the three people. If they succeeded, the result of this battle would be clear. It was this thought that prompted the three of them to come here. And what they had to do was, in a few leaps, the three of them had already arrived outside the human emperor's palace. Then, without hesitation, they activated their strongest magic and blasted it at the gate of the human emperor's palace. Open. As soon as they finished speaking, endless brilliance gushed out from their hands and drowned the gate of the human emperor's palace. Then a crack gradually appeared on the unshakable gate. Let's go in. Seeing this scene, the three of them shook their bodies and turned into extremely tiny rays of light, turning into the crack on the gate of the human emperor's palace. At this time, the commotion caused by Taoist Dong Hua and the other two attacking the gate of the human emperor's palace had alarmed many people. Oh no, there's an enemy attack. Quick, protect the emperor. The human clan elites near the human emperor's palace were alarmed by the huge commotion. They hurriedly walked out of the encampment and quickly formed the human clan's inheritance formation, the chaotic formation, to surround the human emperor's palace. At this time, even the most thick-skinned people realized that something was wrong. The human emperor did not react at all when the enemy had already reached the gate of the human emperor's palace. Could it be that something had really happened to the human emperor? Inexplicably, a haze appeared in everyone's hearts, and the atmosphere here also became oppressive. Then there was a period of speechless silence. No one wanted to go in and take a look. Because there was no need. If the human emperor was here, there was no need for them to make a move. If the human emperor was not here, even if they went in, they would not be a match for the enemy. So they just waited here. Waited for the result. In the human emperor's palace, what were Taoist Dong Hua and the other two doing? Feng Zichen was not in the human emperor's palace, so what was their purpose in entering the palace? After the three of them entered the human emperor's palace, they looked around and found the place where Feng Zichen usually sat cross-legged, then rushed there. After arriving there, Taoist Ziyun's hand shook, and a gorgeous robe appeared in his hand. If someone was here, they would find that the gorgeous robe in Taoist Ziyun's hand was exactly the same as the one Feng Zichen usually wore. However, compared with Feng Zichen's robe, the one in Taoist Ziyun's hand looked much shabbier, as if it had just gone through a great battle with many places worn out. Moreover, there was a force of death that could not be dissipated wrapped around the robe, adding a bit of tragedy to it. What are you waiting for? Why don't you do it? Seeing that the two were still in a daze after he took out the robe, Taoist Ziyun urged with some dissatisfaction. Hearing this, Taoist Dong Hua and Deity came to their senses, each took out a primordial spirit treasure, and threw it at the place where Feng Zichen was sitting cross-legged. Taoist Dong Hua took out a mid-grade primordial spirit treasure with star attribute, and Deity took out a mid-grade primordial spirit treasure innate divine sword. The two took out their magic treasures and had no intention of destroying this place. Their purpose was very simple, which was to melt these two primordial spirit treasures. As soon as the two primordial spirit treasures left their hands, they began to disintegrate in the air, emitting sparkling Tao light and blending into the surrounding heaven and earth. They were transforming into the Tao. Under the power of Taoist Dong Hua and Deity, the two primordial spirit treasures were passively entering the stage of transforming into the Tao. Whoosh! When the two primordial spirit treasures landed on Feng Zichen's couch, they had already entered the final stage of transforming into a mass of light, completely blending into heaven and earth and never to be seen again. At this moment, Taoist Ziyun threw out the robe that resembled Feng Zichen's, which happened to fall between the two primordial spirit treasures. After that, the three fell into silence as if they were suppressing something or brewing something. At a certain moment, the three turned around at the same time and walked out of the human emperor palace. Everyone, the tyrant has fallen. He died under the heavenly jewel, and there is nothing left of him. Walking out of the human emperor palace, the three said to the crowd outside the palace in a slightly heavy tone. Hearing this, the crowd naturally didn't believe it, but they remained silent. Seeing that the crowd didn't believe it, the three smiled indifferently, turned around, opened the door of the human emperor palace, and stepped aside to let the crowd see everything in the palace. Hearing the sound of the door opening, the crowd looked up and saw Feng Zichen's couch in the center of the hall. With this look, the crowd was shocked and then they were filled with endless sorrow. The figure that was originally sitting on the couch had disappeared without a trace. All that was left was an emperor's robe that was wrapped in a dense, deathly still power. In addition to this imperial robe, the aura of the primordial Tao of stars and the primordial Tao of swords reverberated around the couch, each exuding a strong sense of sorrow. All of this indicated a very frightening thing. Renhuang, he had really fallen. But how was this possible? Confusion and sorrow kept reverberating in the hearts of the crowd. Taoist Ziyun and the other two didn't know what the crowd was thinking, and they didn't care. They knew the truth and knew that Feng Zichen was fine. Naturally, they couldn't empathize with the crowd and understand their thoughts. At the moment, Taoist Ziyun and the other two had more important things to do. That was to completely confirm the fact that Feng Zichen had fallen, and completely quell the wild thoughts of the human tribe before Feng Zichen arrived, and seize his position as the human emperor. In this way, even if Feng Zichen returned, it would be too late, and he wouldn't be able to do anything to them. In order to create the illusion that Feng Zichen was dead, the three of them paid a huge price. In fact, the two middle-grade primordial spiritual treasures of the path transformation were nothing at all. The real highlight was still on that gorgeous robe. Feng Zichen was such a fastidious person. Nothing he wore was lower than a superior-grade primordial spiritual treasure. The origin of the emperor's robe on his body was unknown, but it was indeed a supreme-grade primordial spiritual treasure. In order to make it look real, the three of them really imitated a supreme-grade primordial spiritual treasure. In order to refine this emperor's robe, the three of them basically lost everything. Well, it was naturally difficult for ordinary people to refine primordial spiritual treasures, but Chaos Demon Gods could. Even if it was a seriously injured Chaos Demon God, as long as he was willing to pay the price, he could even refine primordial spiritual treasures for you to see. Everyone, you have also seen that the tyrant had lost his way and provoked the wrath of the heavens and the resentment of the people. In the end, even the heavens couldn't stand it anymore and sent down divine punishment to kill him. Throughout history, he was the first supreme to die under divine punishment. His sins were greater than the four seas and greater than Kunlun Mountain. So, are you still going to be stubborn and help the tyrant? Shouts that came from the bottom of their hearts came out from the mouths of the three of them. Looking at their excited expressions, they spoke as if they themselves believed in it. When the human elites below heard this, they were about to speak, but they suddenly realized that their bodies were out of control, as if they were being controlled by strangers. They said words that made them furious. The three kings are right. The tyrant had sinned against the heavens and deserved to die. We really shouldn't be stubborn and die for that tyrant. Now that the three kings have descended with heavenly soldiers, it's a great opportunity for us to achieve our great ambitions. Why don't we join the three kings and help them reorganize the country and return peace to the human race? Taoist Ziyun and the other two were so powerful that the elites of the human tribe could not resist them at all. Their minds were easily taken over by them, and they uttered those insincere words. It could be said that as long as the three of them did not remove their magical powers, these human elites would always lose themselves and serve the three kings to death. Alas, if it weren't for the fact that they were worried about the backlash of the human race's fate, the three of them wouldn't have been so gentle. They just used their magical powers to control the minds of the human elites instead of directly erasing their intelligence and refining them into puppets that only knew how to kill. With the betrayal of the human elites, the ancestral land of the human race quickly fell. The three rebel armies broke through the blockade of the power of all spirits, entered the ancestral land of the human race and took over everything here. Very good, very good. My fruit is about to ripen. Just as the three of them were harvesting the fruits of victory, in the depths of the void, Feng Zichen deliberately left a divine thought behind, silently watching everything. Alas, the three of them were pitiful. They thought that they had succeeded, but they didn't know that everything they were doing now was secretly facilitated by Feng Zichen. From the moment Taoist Dong Hua and the other two absorbed the human race's fate, they had been defeated. The human race's fate that Feng Zichen deliberately divided had long been tampered with. Once it merged with humans, it would spontaneously absorb the surrounding tribulation aura. In other words, every time the three of them conquered a divine city, the tribulation aura on their bodies would also increase as their fate increased. The three of them couldn't detect the increase of the tribulation aura because it was all hidden by the human race's fate. Unless their control of the human race's fate could surpass Feng Zichen's, they would never detect the slightest abnormality. When the three of them attacked the ancestral land of the human race, the tribulation aura had already entered their bodies and they had lost their minds. To put it simply, their intelligence had begun to decrease. They did things that they would never do in the past without considering the consequences at all. At this time, the three of them's perception of danger had dropped to the freezing point. This gave Feng Zichen a chance to plot against them. This led to the scene where the three of them created the illusion that Feng Zichen was dead. Now, Taoist Dong Hua and the other two had attacked the ancestral land of the human race, and the human race's fate in their bodies had skyrocketed again by 5%. This also meant that the tribulation aura on their bodies had become stronger. In the view of Feng Zichen's divine mind, the tribulation aura had already entered the bodies of the three of them and blinded their true spirits. They were not far from death. It was estimated that it wouldn't be long before the three of them fought and then all three of them would be defeated and injured. At that time, Feng Zichen could come out and take advantage of the situation. As for now, it was better to watch the show and think of a way to stop the saints from returning. At this time, the five saints couldn't see the appearance of Taoist Dong Hua and Taoist Ziyun. Otherwise, Feng Zichen's plan would be completely exposed. How could the situation of the two of them be hidden from the saints' eyes? After the three of them entered the ancestral land of the human race, they each occupied a place according to the previous agreement and began to cultivate and recuperate. Chapter 789. For a short period of time, everything was peaceful. However, as time went by, the three rebel armies gradually became hostile. There were no major conflicts, but there were constant small conflicts. Moreover, the influence of the tribulation chi on the three of them was getting worse and worse. Gradually, the three of them became more and more irritable, and they often beat and scolded their subordinates. In addition, the soldiers under their command often had conflicts, so the conflicts between the three of them became more and more serious. One day, the conflicts between the three of them accumulated to the limit and finally broke out. Taoist Purple Cloud and Taoist Dong Hua joined forces and attacked deity together. It was a normal choice. Taoist Dong Hua and Taoist Purple Cloud were allies, but deity was not their ally, let alone a creature from the untainted land. Previously, because they needed deity, the two of them did not mind being hypocritical with deity. But now, with the destruction of the ancestral land of the human clan, all the power of the human clan had fallen into the hands of the three of them. At this point, deity was no longer useful, so the two of them naturally would not show mercy. They decided to kill deity first and then fight. Of course, God was already prepared for what the two of them were thinking. At the moment when the two of them attacked, deity did not panic. Instead, he relied on the unique array of the ancestral land of the human clan to form an inexplicable array and defend himself with all his strength. The array was vast and ancient. At first glance, one could tell that it was not an array of the untainted land, but an inheritance from the ancient chaos era. With the protection of this array and relying on the special terrain of the ancestral land of the human clan, deity might not be a match for Taoist Dong Hua and Taoist Purple Cloud, but the two of them could break deity's defense. As for the special terrain of the ancestral land of the human clan, it was difficult to describe it in words. If one really wanted to describe it, one could only say that it was a kind of general momentum, an invincible general momentum, and an inseparable Taoist connotation. The emperors of the human clan were all born in the ancestral land, and more than 80% of the masters of the human clan came from there. Moreover, during the period when the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors ruled the human clan, the ancestral land of the human clan had once become the center of the untainted land. With the help of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, over 80% of human beings, and the natural fortune of the primitive world, the ancestral land of the humankind gradually changed magically, generating an invincible power. Furthermore, after those experts had attained their Tao in the human race's ancestral land, their Tao marks were naturally branded in the world, causing the void of the human race's ancestral land to be filled with Tao runes. One could say that every blade of grass and every tree in the ancestral land was tainted with Khanate Tao. The ancestral land of the human race could be said to be the #1 sacred ground in the Hotian realm. Here, even if the Daluo Taoist priests were to fight, they might not be able to break it. It was too miraculous. Even if Taoist Dong Hua and Taoist Purple Cloud exhausted all their means, they still could not break the formation set up by deity here. Left with no choice, the two of them could only use the most primitive method, grinding it bit by bit. He was prepared to use his magic power to destroy everything around him in order to break the formation. However, this would take a long time. If they could not kill the god before Feng Zichen returned, then all their previous efforts would be in vain. Trash. In the end, you still need my help. Hidden in the void, Feng Zichen saw everything that happened in the ancestral land with his divine thoughts and could not help but scold the two of them as trash. Then he secretly changed the terrain of the ancestral land of the humankind, forcibly changed the formation of deity, and turned the defensive formation into a sealing formation. Yes, Feng Zichen planned to seal deity and slowly refine him into the ancestral land of the humankind. The fruit of deity was about to ripen, and it was time to harvest it. Now, after he was refined into the ancestral land of the humankind and completely lost himself, he could infuse power into his body and refine him into a perpetual motion machine of the origin level. As for Taoist Purple Cloud and Taoist Donghua, let them continue to fight. When they were both injured, Feng Zichen would appear to take them down and refine them into the Taiyang and Taiyin divine cities. When the rebel army was in civil strife, the human emperor would descend from the sky and kill the 3 rebel army leaders in one fell swoop, restoring the human race's glory. This plan could be called perfect. Yes, Feng Zichen once again changed his plan at the last minute. In the past, according to his idea, he planned to refine Taoist Donghua or Taoist Purple Cloud into the human emperor city after they became the human emperor. But with the appearance of deity, Feng Zichen had a better substitute, so there was no need for the two of them to become the human emperor. Thinking about it carefully, Feng Zichen also felt that it was inappropriate to sacrifice the human emperor. In that case, he would put the two of them into the Taiyang and Taiyin divine cities in the name of traitors. In this way, it could also serve as a warning to the future generations. It was really not bad. In order to refine deity into the ancestral land of the humankind, Feng Zichen also put in some effort. He did not do it directly but subtly changed the terrain. At the same time, he also influenced the thoughts of Taoist Donghua and Taoist Purple Cloud through the fate of the humankind in their bodies, so that they could speed up the process of changing the terrain. Yes, under Feng Zichen's manipulation, Taoist Purple Cloud and Taoist Donghua completely carried out his plan. Changing the defensive formation into a sealing formation and refining deity into the ancestral land of the humankind alive. In the impression of the two of them, this plan was completely thought up by themselves. They had become Feng Zichen's chess pieces without knowing it. How could they fight with him in this way? Under the influence of the fate of the humankind, deity did not notice that something was wrong at first when the terrain changed and the formation became easier. When he gradually realized that something was wrong and wanted to get away, it was already over. It was not that the formation had been completed, but that Feng Zichen's divine thought, carrying the last power of the humankind's fate, quietly appeared beside deity and firmly fixed him in place, unable to move. Fellow Taoist, your chaos demon celestial has indeed lost this game, Feng Zichen said through his divine thought as he quietly walked up to deity. Seeing the arrival of Feng Zichen, deity knew that he had fallen into his opponent's trap from the beginning to the end. He had completely lost this battle. After struggling for a while and finding that he could not escape, deity was a straightforward person. In order to prevent himself from falling into the hands of the enemy and being humiliated, he directly destroyed his chaotic real spirit. Before his real spirit collapsed, deity smiled strangely and said, "Really? Do you really think you've won?" As soon as he finished speaking, deity's aura completely disappeared, and his intelligence returned to the body of the demon celestial, leaving only an empty shell on the spot. And this was exactly what Feng Zichen needed. You want to mess with my Taoist heart with just one sentence? What a joke. Feeling the disappearance of deity's aura, Feng Zichen could not help but laugh. Although he said so, his heart was covered with a layer of haze. Thinking about it carefully, they did win the battle with the Chaos Demon Celestial easily and did not suffer any losses at all. Is there a trick in this? For a moment, Feng Zichen's mind was filled with thoughts. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that there was something fishy. But if he was asked to say what was wrong, he could not say. In the end, he really could not figure it out, so he could only put these things at the back of his mind. Since he could not figure it out, he could only deal with it as it came. Moreover, the present untainted land had a sufficient foundation. The Tao of Heaven had just obtained the bodies of the 9 Chaos Demons Celestial and was in the midst of a grand plan. Even if the untainted land was broken at this time, he could use the origins of these Chaos Demons Celestial to create a stronger and bigger untainted land. In this case, what was there to worry about? No matter how big the tribulation was, could it be bigger than the destruction of the untainted land? Now, they were not even afraid of the destruction of the untainted land, so what was there to be afraid of? Thinking of this, Feng Zichen was completely relieved. Putting away his wandering thoughts, Feng Zichen looked at the body left by deity in front of him. This was a good thing. If refined properly, it would be a primordial chaos perpetual motion machine. Moreover, except for the lack of a true spirit, the body of deity had everything else. It could be said to be the best material for refining puppets. If an indestructible true spirit was planted in deity's sea of consciousness, then in the future, there would be no need to worry about deity's body being taken away by others. All in all, most of this body was perfect. The only shortcoming was that its realm was too low. Now it only had the realm of sage to be perfection. There was still a long way to go to become the Daluo Jingxian of the primordial chaos. And this required Feng Zichen to use a lot of resources to accumulate. Fortunately, this body already had the realm of the Daluo Jingxian of the primordial chaos. It just lacked the power of the primordial chaos. Otherwise, no matter how much resources Feng Zichen used, he would not be able to push it to the realm of the Daluo Jingxian of the primordial chaos. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen had already started. He used his finger as a pen and the power of the surrounding ancestral land of the human clan as ink. He started to draw on deity's body. Mysterious runes of the Great Way emerged from Feng Zichen's hand. They shone brightly and bloomed with bright divine light. Rumble. The moment the divine light lit up, the surrounding void shook as if it had been summoned. Then spots of light appeared and poured into deity's body. This was the origin of heaven and earth. It was the foundation of the human clan's ancestral land that had been accumulated for countless years. Now it was summoned by Feng Zichen to strengthen deity's body. As the runes continued to take shape, Feng Zichen's divine thought incarnation was slowly becoming illusory. This was a sign of energy exhaustion. After all, it was not the main body. Its power was limited. The level of these runes of the Great Way was still too high. It was far from what Feng Zichen's divine thought could carve. The runes of the Great Way were naturally the runes that Feng Zichen had comprehended from the Great Way. They had no other use but to seal everything. With the seal of the runes of the Great Way, even if deity's true spirit reappeared, Yi Xiu would still want to return to his body. The runes of the Great Way were specially used by Feng Zichen to target the Chaos Demon gods. Otherwise, it would be more convenient for him to use the runes of the Heavenly Way. When the power of this incarnation was exhausted, the runes of the Great Way should be mostly drawn. However, it did not matter if it was not finished. When that time came, Feng Zichen's main body would almost be back. At the same time, in the depths of the chaos beyond the sky, the Heavenly Way had completely absorbed the flesh and blood of the 9 Chaos Demon gods and was about to leave. It was also at this moment that Fushi suddenly arrived and happened to see the Heavenly Way for the last time. The moment he saw the full appearance of the Heavenly Way, Fushi felt endless mysteries surging into his heart, causing him to involuntarily fall into enlightenment. After Fushi arrived, the figure of the Heavenly Way disappeared into the chaos beyond the sky. The moment the Heavenly Way completely disappeared, Patriarch Nether River arrived. However, he was still a step too late. He did not see the full appearance of the Heavenly Way, only a part of its body. Even so, it was enough for him to benefit a lot. At this moment, with the departure of the Heavenly Way, Feng Zichen and the others woke up one after another. Then they saw Fushi, who was immersed in enlightenment, and Patriarch Nether River, who was in a daze. Before anyone could react, Goddess Nuwa instinctively turned into a rainbow light and came to Fushi's side to protect him. At the same time, Feng Zichen also moved. He came to the other side of Fushi and looked at everyone nervously. On the other side, Goddess Hudu also moved and protected Patriarch Nether River behind her. At this moment, everyone also realized what had happened. Because the two of them had caught a glimpse of the Heavenly Way's main body, they had fallen into the deepest level of enlightenment and were transforming into primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. If not for the protection of Goddess Nuwa and Goddess Hutu, everyone might have attacked the two of them to destroy their opportunity to attain the Tao. But now, even if they wanted to attack, they did not have the chance. After an unknown period of time, perhaps a month, a year or 10 years, the two of them woke up one after the other. The first to wake up was Patriarch Nether River. His aura was like an abyss and extremely terrifying. He faintly had the tendency to break through the limit and take a step closer. Unfortunately, he was still a step away. The Patriarch Nether River saw too little of the Heavenly Way's main body. It was not enough for him to reach the sky in one step and take the most crucial half step. However, even so, he had obtained a lot of benefits. He was afraid that with another opportunity, he would be able to reach the realm of primordial chaos. After Patriarch Nether River, Fushi also woke up. The aura on his body was extremely mysterious. It was as if he had become one with the Tao, releasing a faintly discernible aura. At the same time, the shadow of a great Tao slowly formed behind Fushi, as if it would really descend at any time. Seeing this, everyone had different expressions. Some were shocked, some were surprised, and some were relieved. In the end, everyone put away their thoughts and turned into a smile again. They congratulated Fushi. Congratulations on attaining the Tao, fellow Taoist Fushi. After suffering for countless years, you have finally transcended. Fushi attaining the Tao. Just like that, he had reached the realm of primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian? Yes and no. Fushi had indeed cultivated to the realm of primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, but it was not perfect. He had only reached the realm, but his strength had not reached this level. He still needed some time to accumulate. Fushi's breakthrough this time was too sudden. Even he did not expect it. As a result, he was not prepared and did not do his best. However, for cultivators, the realm was the foundation. As long as the realm was reached, everything would not be a problem. P.S. Begging for monthly votes. Chapter 790. Next, even if Fushi did nothing, his strength would naturally increase and push him into the realm of the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. In other words, Fushi had really attained the Tao. After leaving this place and going into seclusion for a period of time, he would be able to transcend heaven and earth and become a perfect primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Fellow Taoists, you're too kind. Fushi said modestly after coming back to his senses. He had to be humble. Even if Fushi attained the Tao, he would not be a match for the saints. It was still too late for him to attain the Tao, and he had already been left far behind by the saints. However, even if it was too late, it was still good to be able to become the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. After all, there were still a large group of powerful figures behind Fushi who were stuck at the last step and unable to break through. After congratulating Fushi, everyone congratulated the Nether River Patriarch. Congratulations to fellow Taoist Nether River. Today you are lucky enough to see the heavenly Tao. You will definitely be able to attain the great Tao in the future. Although the Nether River Patriarch did not directly reach the primordial chaos realm like Fushi, he was not to be underestimated. After seeing the heavenly Tao, the path of the Tao had been opened, and he was just waiting for the opportunity to take that crucial step and become an existence on par with them. Thank you for your auspicious words, fellow Taoists. After getting along with everyone for so many years, even the cold Nether River Patriarch had become a little more tactful and no longer treated everyone as indifferently as before. While everyone was exchanging pleasantries, Feng Zichen was about to make up a reason to delay everyone, lest they found that Taoist Ziyun and Taoist Donghua were not in the right state after returning to the primordial world and spoiling his plan. However, just as Feng Zichen was about to speak, he suddenly felt a throbbing in his heart, as if something bad had happened. At the same time, the rest of the people also frowned and felt something. Something bad had happened. If Feng Zichen was the only one frowning, the bad thing could be said to be related to the human race. However, when everyone frowned, it could only mean that something was wrong with the primordial world. Otherwise, everyone would not have sensed that something was wrong at the same time and had a bad premonition. But what could be wrong with the primordial world? Chaos Demon God. Suddenly, a name appeared in everyone's mind. In this world, the only one who could cause problems in the untainted land was the Chaos Fiend Celestial. Since there was a problem in the untainted land, it could only be related to the Chaos Fiend God. They had been careless. There might be more than 9 Chaos Demon Gods attacking the untainted land. It was no wonder that the god said those words before he died. It turned out that whether it was him or the 9 Chaos Fiend Gods hiding in the chaos beyond the heavens, they were all pretenses. Their real purpose was to hide the traces of the Chaos Demon Gods hiding in the untainted land so as to attract the attention of the public and create opportunities for them to take action. Knowing that things were not going well, Feng Zichen did not bother to delay the others. He directly transformed into a beam of rainbow light and sped towards the untainted land. Behind him, the other primordial chaos experts also used all their strength to rush toward the primordial world. The primordial world was their foundation. If something happened to the primordial world, all their battles would be meaningless. In that case, how could everyone let anything happen to the primordial world? Swish, 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 their speed was very fast and they were flying at full speed. Even so, several years had passed by the time they crossed the endless chaos and arrived in the untainted land. When they arrived in the untainted land, their speed was even faster. No matter where they were in the untainted land, they could reach it in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. After returning to the untainted land, the 10 people did not hesitate at all. They directly released their divine thoughts and scanned the untainted land inch by inch, trying to find the traces of the Chaos Demon Gods. Unfortunately, they were disappointed. Even after searching the entire untainted land, they did not find any aura of the Chaos Demon Gods. It was as if what they had sensed just now was an illusion. But how could that be? It was an illusion. At most, one of them sensed it wrongly. It was impossible for all 10 of them to sense it wrongly, right? Was that possible? Absolutely impossible. The Chaos Demon Gods must be hiding in the untainted land and are planning something unfavorable to the untainted land. It's just that we can't find them. In that case, fellow cultivators, what do you think we should do next? Unable to find any trace of the Chaos Demon Gods, Feng Zichen could only give up his futile efforts and turn his head to ask everyone. Let's wait and see. Since we can't find any trace of the Chaos Demon Gods, we can only wait and see. When they take the initiative to jump out, we can make a plan. After thinking about it, the Grand Pure One said. Right now, waiting and seeing might not be the best way, but it was definitely the only way. This was because they could not think of any other way apart from this method. Alright. Everyone thought about it and could only nod helplessly. Other than that, they did not have any other good ideas. The enemy was in the dark while they were in the light. This was the only way. They were too passive. After the exchange, everyone fell into silence again. In the current situation, there was nothing to say except silence. However, suddenly, the great Emperor of Ziwei reached out and grabbed the remaining arm of the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning beside him. He looked at him with a faint smile and asked, Brother Yuqing, what do you mean by this? The Panga banner had appeared on the arm of the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. At the same time, Fushi's figure moved and blocked in front of the Donghuang Tai. The Lady of Earth activated the shadow of the 6 paths of reincarnation and blocked in front of the 2 saints. Feng Zichen and Yuhua attacked at the same time. One of them blocked the Grandmaster of Heaven, and the other blocked the Grand Pure One. The situation became tense all of a sudden. Brothers, please calm down. If we really want to fight here, there's no need for the Chaos Demon Gods to do anything. Just a few of us can shatter the untainted land into pieces. While they were confronting each other, Feng Zichen said in a deep voice. As for why this scene happened, of course it was because when the 5 saints were searching for the traces of the Chaos Demon Gods, they also discovered the abnormalities of Taoist Donghua and Taoist Ziyun. Taoist Donghua was the key to the 3 Pure Ones' control of the human clan. Taoist Ziyun was related to the future path of the 2 saints of the West. They could not let anything happen to him. Therefore, after confirming that they could not find the traces of the Chaos Demon Gods, the 5 saints directly attacked and wanted to save the 2 of them. However, Feng Zichen was very cunning. Since returning to the untainted land, he had been staring at the expressions of the 5 saints and was always vigilant of them. The 5 saints thought that they attacked very suddenly and would not give Feng Zichen a chance to react. However, the other party had been staring at them and stopped them before they could make a move. 5 against 6, Feng Zichen was completely defeated. However, things were not that simple. The difference in strength between the 2 sides was not big. Even if the 3 Pure Ones were stronger, they were not much stronger and could not take down the other party in a short time. That was enough. This battle was destined not to happen. Once the 2 sides fought with all their strength, even if the 3 Pure Ones could win in the end, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. At least the untainted land would be completely shattered. However, if the 3 Pure Ones could not win, Feng Zichen could not win either. The 2 sides could only be in a stalemate and no one could do anything to the other. Fellow Taoist Fushi, have you forgotten our past relationship? Do you really want to be my enemy? Do you want to be the enemy of the Demon Clan? You must know that the Demon Clan still sees you as Emperor Shi. Suddenly Donghuang Tai said to Fushi. He could not accept that Fushi had completely cut off his relationship with the Demon Clan and did not care about their past relationship at all. Hearing that, Fushi was silent for a moment and said indifferently, Brother Tai, Emperor Shi's destiny has come to an end and he has returned to heaven and earth. Now there is only the heavenly Emperor Fushi. With the fall of Emperor Shi, everything in the past has become a thing of the past and can no longer be traced. Moreover, in Emperor Shi's life, he had a clear conscience to the Demon Clan, the Heavenly Court and his former comrades. He knew that he would die in the last battle, but he still sacrificed himself generously and lived and died with the Demon Clan. Similarly, Emperor Shi has a clear conscience to the Demon Clan, and the Heavenly Emperor will not let the human clan down. He swore to live and die with the human clan. Fushi's words were resolute and decisive. There was no room for negotiation. In fact, just as he said, Fushi did not have any guilt towards the Demon Clan and the Heavenly Court. He had already died for the heavenly court and sacrificed his life to exchange for the candle dragon, the number one sage of the witch clan. In that case, what else could he do? Fellow Taoist Fushi. Dong Huang Tai wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by Fushi just as he opened his mouth. Brother Tai, do you want to talk to Poor Wei about how Brother Di Jun treated Poor Wei during the battle between the liches and the demons? Tai fell silent when Fushi said that. For a moment he did not know what to say. During the battle between the liches and the demons, Fushi did not have to die. As one of the three emperors of the demon clan, Di Jun and Tai did not die at the hands of the enemy. Instead, the number one sage of the demon clan, Fushi, was the first to die at the hands of the enemy. With one look he knew that there was a problem. What was the problem? Di Jun had deliberately arranged for Fushi to be in the most dangerous place. He wanted to use this method to force Goddess Nuwa to save Fushi so that he could be involved in the battle between the liches and the demons and add a lot of help to the demon clan. However, in the end, before Goddess Nuwa could make a move, Fushi had already perished together with the candle dragon. At this point there was nothing to talk about. Fushi had a clear conscience towards Di Jun, but Di Jun had a guilty conscience towards him. Sai, my big brother, I really didn't know what happened at that time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let my big brother plot against you like this. In short, we brothers have let you down. In the future when we see you we will retreat and apologize to you. After saying that, Tai turned around and left. When he said that he would retreat, he meant that he would retreat. Tai never lied. When Fushi was still emperor, Tai was really good to him. He treated him as a brother and even generously lent him the Bell of Chaos to comprehend. But Di Jun, in other words, the emperor's suspicious personality was vividly displayed by him. In the huge heavenly court, he didn't trust anyone other than Tai. If it weren't for the fact that he had no choice, Patriarch Kuan-Peng wouldn't have betrayed the heavenly court. After Tai left, the strength of the two sides seemed to be more balanced. Then everyone still stared at each other without moving. If I can't make a move, then you can't make a move either. That was what both sides thought. Next, it was time to see whose trump card was better. Not long after, the great divine abilities of the primordial world returned to the primordial world from the chaos outside the heavens. The first were the great divine abilities of the Nether River Patriarch, Zenyuanzi, and the Queen Mother of the West. The first moment Zenyuanzi and the Queen Mother of the West returned to the primordial world, they subconsciously released their divine senses to check on their fellow Taoist situation. Then their faces darkened. The tribulation aura had invaded the true spirit. This was the rhythm of death. At this time, Taoist Donghua and Taoist Ziyun had already killed God and completely sealed him in the ancestral land of the human race, never to be free. Well, under Feng Zichen's hint, the two of them thought so. After killing God, Feng Zichen casually instigated a few words and let the two of them fight. He planned to fight to the death, and the winner would ascend to the position of the human emperor. After Zenyuanzi and the Queen Mother of the West rushed back to the primordial world, they saw this scene. The two of them were fighting to the death in the ancestral land of the human race. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the clearest. As outsiders, it was not difficult for Zenyuanzi and the Queen Mother of the West to see that the two of them had been schemed against. It was too miserable. They had been completely played like monkeys. Looking at the two of them, Zenyuanzi and the Queen Mother of the West panicked for them. After that, they did not hesitate to pull the two of them apart. The three pure ones and the two sages of the West hoped that the two of them would become the human emperor to achieve their hidden purpose. But Zenyuanzi and the Queen Mother of the West did not think so. They only hoped that the two of them could be resurrected. As for whether they could become the human emperor or not, it was not important. They were all top innate divine demons. Even if they did not have the karmic rank, they could achieve the supreme Tao fruit in the future. It would just take a little more time. What did it matter? Now that the sages were busy with their own affairs, they could take this opportunity to let Dong Wang Gong and ancestor Hong Yun get out of this whirlpool. Thinking of this, the two of them had already taken action to pull Taoist Dong Hua and Taoist Ziyun apart. However, it was easy to enter the tribulation but difficult to get out. How could it be so easy to get out of the tribulation? Ancestor Mingi, who was beside the two of them, saw their actions and rolled his eyes. Suddenly he held up the two innate killing swords Yuan-Tu and Abi and blocked their divine skills. Seeing that Ancestor Mingi was making trouble, the Queen Mother of the West said unhappily, "What do you mean by this? In the past, did Poor Wei offend you?" Hearing this, Ancestor Mingi laughed and said, "It's a misunderstanding. Poor Wei did not mean to be your enemy. I just subconsciously stopped you when I saw you and Zenyuanzi attacking together." As he spoke, Ancestor Mingi put away the Abi divine sword in front of the Queen Mother of the West and pointed it at Zenyuanzi. With the karma of the past, Ancestor Mingi would not let Ancestor Hongyun return before he became the Daluo Jingxian of the origin. It would add some karma to him. On the other side, after Ancestor Mingi stopped, the Queen Mother of the West also realized that it was impossible to get Dong Wang Gong out of the tribulation today. P.S. I haven't read it for a few weeks. This book seems to be getting more and more popular among the pirates. Vomiting blood. Please come and support me. Also, I beg for monthly votes. Chapter 791. With a thought, the Queen Mother of the West grabbed Taoist Dong Hua's hand and quietly sent a strand of Dharma power into Taoist Dong Hua's body. Then, the Queen Mother of the West quietly extracted a strand of the real spirit that belonged to Dong Wang Kung in Taoist Dong Hua's body. At this moment, the palm of the Queen Mother of the West grabbed Taoist Dong Hua's body and was about to take him away. Goddess Taijin, please stop. Suddenly, the world changed, and the figures of the earthly Emperor Shenong and the human Emperor Shenyuan came together from the void. At the same time, the powerful dragon chi of the human Tao spread out from their bodies, shattering the Queen Mother of the West's magic skill and suppressing Taoist Dong Hua. Taijin was the Queen Mother of the West's title, the innate goddess Taijin. While no one was paying attention, the Queen Mother of the West quietly put away Dong Wang Gong's true spirit. She heaved a sigh of relief and asked the two human sovereigns, "My friends, what is the meaning of this?" In the void, the earthly Emperor Shenong reached out and suppressed Taoist Ziyun. The human Emperor Shenyuan also took action at the same time, pressing Taoist Dong Hua and suppressing him. At this time Shenong explained with a smile, "Goddess Taijin, you don't know. We heard that Taoist Dong Hua and Taoist Ziyun of our clan actually colluded with the Chaos Fiend God, intending to subvert the human clan and destroy the untainted land. Knowing that this matter was too serious, we didn't dare to delay and hurried over from the Fire Cloud Cave to see if it was true. After arriving here, we knew that the rumor was true, so we didn't dare to hesitate and quickly suppressed them to prevent them from causing more trouble." Speaking of this, Shenong asked with a smile, "Goddess Taijin, do you know this thief who colluded with the Chaos Fiend God? In order to break into the ancestral land of the human clan, Taoist Dong Hua and Taoist Ziyun did not hesitate to join forces with the reincarnation of the Chaos Fiend God. Although in the end, the two of them fell out with the god, it was an indisputable fact that they had joined forces with the god. Even if the Queen Mother of the West wanted to exonerate the two of them, she couldn't think of a good reason. Colluding with the Chaos Fiend God was a grave sin that not even a saint could bear. After the two sages of the West were exposed as the descendants of the Chaos Fiend God, they almost lost their foothold in the untainted world. Later on, the two of them performed extremely well in the battle against the Chaos Demon God, which changed everyone's impression of them. Even saints were like this, let alone outsiders. For a moment, the Queen Mother of the West secretly complained about Tung Wang Kung's boldness. How could he team up with the Chaos Demonic God? What a fool. Fortunately, he was more vigilant. He realized that he could not save Dong Wang Kong this time and extracted one of his true spirits in advance. Otherwise, Taoist Tung Wang Gong would really be in danger this time. Poor Wei is a congenital saint of the primeval age. How can she have anything to do with the thieves who colluded with the Chaos Fiend God? This poor Wei doesn't know this person. If you want to kill him or torture him, please do as you see fit." After saying that, the Queen Mother of the West turned and left. His actions stunned Shenyuan and Shino. They had thought that it would be a tough battle and they had prepared all kinds of methods. However, before they could do anything, the other party surrendered. It felt like they had hit cotton and there was nowhere to use their strength. It was really strange. Since when was the Queen Mother of the West so easy to talk to? Shino and Shenyuan did not notice the Queen Mother of the West's small actions. However, Feng Zichen and the others who were watching the situation closely in the sky saw the Queen Mother of the West's actions clearly. However, everyone pretended not to see it. At this point, Tung Wang Gong was no longer of much use. If the Queen Mother of the West wanted to save him, then so be it. As for Feng Zichen, he did not care about him at all. Tung Wang Gong's identity as Taoist Dong Hua had made a big mistake in the human clan. It could be said that he had formed a big karma with the human clan. In the future he would have to pay back. Tung Wang Gong could live, but Ancestor Hongyun must die. This was the only thought in the minds of the two saints of the West. "I'm sorry, fellow Taoist Hongyun. Since we don't have the ability to push you to the position of the human emperor, we can only wrong you one more time. Please continue to fall for a while." When we have the confidence to help you achieve Tao, we will help you to be resurrected. The two looked at each other tacitly and made a decision in their hearts. They could not save Ancestor Hong Yun. Clang. After blocking the Yuan killer sword once again, Zhen Xing suddenly sighed and turned to leave. Alas. At this point he also knew that Ancestor Hong Yun was doomed. With his ability, there was no possibility of saving him. In that case he might as well leave. He could not bear to see his good friend die in front of him. After the hindrance left, the Emperor of Earth, Shino, and the Human Emperor, Xianyuan, were relieved. They grabbed Taoist Ziyun and Taoist Donghua and walked to the two divine cities of Taiyang and Taiyin respectively. Next, according to Feng Zichen's instructions, Shino and Xianyuan first extracted the innate indestructible true spirits of Taoist Donghua and Taoist Ziyun and suppressed them in the fate of the human clan. Then, they filled their physical bodies into the two divine cities of Taiyang and Taiyang respectively and used them as energy to drive the operation of the two divine cities. At this point, the internal strife of the human clan had come to an end. Next, they would enter the final stage. Suppress the rebels. Kill those who should be killed, capture those who should be captured, and release those who should be released. Well, in this, the human clan was secondary. The disciples of the three sects and the countless cultivators of the immortal path were the most important. The names on the investiture of the gods, the ghost decree, ghost sealing list, and the map of the gods would be filled by them. After a few years of turmoil, the human clan gradually calmed down and the rebels were eliminated one after another. The names on the three lists were all complete. After all, they were Khanate god fiends with the mandate of heaven. Among the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, except for Samantabhadra, Manjushri, Ju Lu Sun, and Si Hang who died unexpectedly, the other 8 were all seriously injured but luckily escaped the calamity. They were so lucky because they were Khanate god fiends and had the protection of heaven and earth. However, the rest of the people, such as the disciples of the Jia sect and the Buddhist disciples, were all born as Khanate life forms and did not have the luck of the disciples of the Chan sect. More than 90% of the disciples died in the calamity. The losses were heavy. If not for the fact that the 4 true disciples of the Jia sect, as well as some of the outer disciples of the 3 Shao immortals, did not enter the calamity and were safe, the Jia sect would have been destroyed. The 2 saints of the West also had a trick up their sleeves. The most outstanding disciples of the Western sect were not affected by the calamity because of their diligent cultivation of merit. Because of this, they were safe and did not get destroyed. At the end of the war, the 3 lists shone at the same time, announcing the end of the calamity. Whoosh, endless divine light rose from the bodies of the 3 lists. It was extremely bright like the sun. In an instant, it illuminated every corner of the untainted land. Sizzle. Under the illumination of this divine light, the boundless tribulation aura that permeated the area seemed to have met its natural enemy as it quickly melted away. Soon half of it had disappeared. However, no matter how the divine light shone on the remaining half, it could not be eliminated. The 3 lists were full, which was the sign of the end of the God investiture tribulation. The calamity aura in the world should have melted under the illumination of the 3 lists. But what was going on now? Was it because not enough people had died so the calamity was not over yet? For a moment, the mighty figures in the primitive world could not help but have wild thoughts when they saw this scene. The rest of the people did not know what was going on, but Feng Zichen and the 5 saints on the opposite side seemed to have sensed something and vaguely understood something. The current abnormality was probably related to them. Although the 3 lists were full, the karma was not clear. Therefore, the God investiture tribulation was not complete yet. The karma was naturally the karma between Feng Zichen and the 3 pure ones. The saints were the spokespersons of the heavenly Tao. Feng Zichen broke the arm of the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. This was a huge karma. When Feng Zichen was in charge of the human race, the 3 pure ones used the power of the heavenly gods to force him to abdicate. They forcefully changed the laws of heaven and earth, causing the environment of the human territory to become worse and worse. Gradually, it was not suitable for the human race to survive. This was also a huge karma. Then the 2 sides fought back and forth, using the primitive world as a battlefield. This caused the karma thread to sink deeper and deeper, becoming denser and denser. Even the heavenly Tao could not clear it and could not cut it. Therefore, due to the interference of this huge karma thread, the God investiture tribulation could not be completed. If the calamity was not completed, the calamity aura would naturally not disappear. In order to complete the calamity, the only way was to clear up this karma. How could he clear up this karma? It was simple. He could only fight. Fellow Taoists, it seems that we can't avoid this battle. With a thought, Feng Zichen said to the 5 saints opposite him. Indeed, if we don't fight, the karma will not be clear. If the karma is not clear, the calamity aura will not disappear. If the calamity aura does not disappear, the primordial world will not be peaceful and all living beings will not be at ease. Therefore this battle has to be fought. The Grand Pure One waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and pretended to be mysterious. How should we fight? Fellow Taoists, should the 5 of you attack together, or should the 5 of you come one by one? Feng Zichen swept his gaze across the faces of the 5 saints and said proudly. From what he said, he actually wanted to fight the 5 of them alone and not use the power of the people behind him to fight against the 5 saints. That's right. This is the karma between Feng Zichen and the 5 saints. It should be resolved between them. If outsiders were to interfere, it would only cause the karma to grow. In the end, it would be even more difficult to end it. Before the others could speak, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning spoke first. Fellow Taoist Gaochen, you must be joking. The Poor Way and the others can't do such a thing. To be honest, when they saw that Feng Zichen wanted to fight the 5 of them alone, the 5 saints really wanted to agree. However, with so many people present, if they really agreed to Feng Zichen's suggestion of fighting the 5 of them alone, they would not be able to see anyone in the primordial world in the future. 5 against 1, wouldn't it be embarrassing? If no one was present, the 5 saints would definitely agree and beat Feng Zichen half to death and tell him not to be so arrogant. Of course, if no one was present, Feng Zichen would not be so arrogant as to say that he wanted to fight the 5 of them alone. He had calculated that the 5 saints would definitely not agree to his suggestion of fighting the 5 of them alone. That was why he dared to be so arrogant. In a fight, winning or losing aside, he definitely could not lose his aura. How do you want to fight, fellow Taoists? It doesn't matter. Just say it. Zichen will not reject anyone. No matter how one looked at it, he would be at a disadvantage if he fought the 5 of them alone. Therefore, Feng Zichen simply gave the 5 saints the choice of how to fight. If he chose how to fight, he would be the one at a disadvantage no matter what. However, if the 5 saints were to choose, it would be different. They would definitely not choose a fighting method that was beneficial to them in consideration of their own reputation. In this way, Feng Zichen could save some face. When? That was impossible. If he really had the ability to defeat the 5 saints, then why would he need to play tricks with the 5 saints here? Wouldn't it be fine if he just went up? Hearing this, the 5 saints fell into silence. For a moment they did not know what to say. At this time, their reputation had become their greatest concern. If they could give up their reputation, then all of Feng Zichen's plans would be meaningless. However, giving up their reputation was easier said than done. After a long silence, the Grand Pure One suddenly said, "We are all primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. Our Dharma powers are unfathomable and can easily destroy the world. If we fight in the primordial world, we will definitely smash the primordial world into powder. Therefore we can't fight in the primordial world. Since that's the case, let's fight." Hearing that, Feng Zichen asked, "How should we fight?" After thinking for a while, the Grand Pure One said, "Poor Way and the other 3 will each use a technique for you to break it. If fellow Taoist is able to break it, then the karma between you and us will be resolved. On the other hand, if you can't break it, the karma between us will be resolved. What do you think, fellow Taoist?" The Grand Pure One spoke in a roundabout manner, but Feng Zichen still understood. The 5 of them would each come up with a difficult problem. If he could solve it, the karma between him and the 5 saints would be resolved. One thing to note here was the karma between him and the 5 saints, not the karma between him and the 5 saints. The karma this time was mutual. In other words, Feng Zichen owed the 5 saints a karma. Similarly, the 5 saints owed Feng Zichen a karma. After the karma between the 5 saints and Feng Zichen was resolved, Feng Zichen would resolve the karma between him and the 5 saints. Yes, to put it more simply, it could be regarded as a turn-based game. Now it was the turn of the 5 saints. Next it was Feng Zichen's turn. Because the 3 pure ones still owed Feng Zichen a karma, they had set the conditions to resolve the karma with Feng Zichen after failing. Simply put, if you win against us, you can continue to cause trouble for us in the future. However, if you lose, it doesn't matter. We won't make things difficult for you. However, you can't cause trouble for us in the future. That's the condition. It depends on whether you agree or not. Alright, let's do as you say, fellow Taoist. Feng Zichen thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. He had no right to refuse. The current situation was such. He was weaker than others. He had no other choice but to agree. He couldn't let him choose the way to fight, right? Fellow Taoist, who wants to go first? Feng Zichen took a step forward and asked. P.S. I'm fascinated by the last part. If the logic is wrong, I'll change it later. In addition, there's a top-up and free coin event at Chidian today. I'm tempted. I really want to add a silver alliance, but I'm too poor. I don't even have an alliance leader. I'm envious of the other big shots. Chapter 792. After thinking for a while, the Grand Pure One said, let's start with the Poor Way. The Poor Way has a Taiji painting. Fellow Taoist Gauchen, please walk inside. If you can walk out in 100 years, the Poor Way will lose this round. On the other hand, if you can't walk out in 100 years, you will lose this round. As he spoke, the Grand Pure One took out the Taiji painting from his chest pocket. With a shake of his hand, he threw the painting into the air. Rumble. The Taiji painting slowly unfolded in the air. The power of Taiji surged crazily, producing yin, yang, and 4 symbols. It was extremely mysterious. The 4 powers surged continuously, and the Kanate Taiji Chi boiled. A Taiji world slowly appeared in front of everyone. Feng Zichen's heart flickered when he saw that. The Grand Pure One was indeed not simple. He could actually come up with such a clever idea. As a heaven-opening treasure, the Taiji painting was not that easy to break. Under normal circumstances, if Feng Zichen was trapped in the Taiji painting, he might not be able to break it even after thousands of years, let alone 100 years. Blocking the Taiji painting and breaking it were 2 completely different concepts. It was just like the supreme-grade Kanate Mountain River map. Although it was powerful, as long as one was not trapped inside, it was basically useless to powerful mystical abilities. The most taboo thing about treasures like paintings was to be trapped inside. Normally, when fighting the Grand Pure One, everyone would be wary of the Taiji painting. Naturally, it was impossible for him to take it away. However, now the Grand Pure One had taken advantage of this opportunity to let Feng Zichen take the initiative to enter the Taiji painting. However, Feng Zichen could not refuse. He was really cunning. Fellow Taoist, please. When the Taiji world was formed, the Grand Pure One said politely to Feng Zichen. Sure. Feng Zichen narrowed his eyes and answered. Then he took a step forward and walked towards the Taiji world. Normally, Feng Zichen would not be able to break through the Taiji painting within 100 years. If he entered, he would most likely be trapped by the Grand Pure One for millions of years. But now, with the incarnation of the Taiji Patriarch, he was confident that he could break open the Taiji diagram in a short period of time. The Grand Pure One wanted to trap him with the Taiji painting, but he was wrong. Haha, let the Grand Pure One see how capable I am. With a confident smile, Feng Zichen stepped into the Taiji world formed by the Taiji painting. The Grand Pure One's pupils constricted when he saw that. He forcefully suppressed the thought of taking away the Taiji painting. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As long as he willed and took back the Taiji diagram, he could lock Feng Zichen in the Taiji diagram and never come out. In this way, he could be considered to have eliminated a great enemy. However, if the Grand Pure One really dared to do that, he would be surrounded and attacked by Feng Zichen's saints and cause a huge disaster. Moreover, after suppressing Feng Zichen, the Grand Pure One would probably never be able to use the Taiji painting again. Once he opened the Taiji painting, Feng Zichen, who was inside, would find an opportunity to break out of the painting. It was not an easy task to suppress a primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian at his peak. He needed the Grand Pure One to bet a Kanate cardinal treasure. The Grand Pure One could not afford to pay such a price. Rumble. In the world of the Taiji painting, apart from the Kanate Taiji power, there were 4 other forces surging. They interweaved with earth, fire, water, and wind, forming small worlds that were constantly being born and destroyed. While the worlds were being born and destroyed, waves of destructive tides swept over, destroying everything. The scene was extremely terrifying. As soon as Feng Zichen entered, he saw endless Kanate Taiji power surging towards him, wanting to assimilate him and become a part of the Taiji Chi. At the same time, the earth, fire, water, and wind surged. The destructive aura surged towards him. Whoosh! Seeing that, a divine light flashed across Feng Zichen's body. It was black and white, divided into yin and yang. It was endless and collided with the surrounding power. In an instant, a miraculous change happened. Whether it was the Kanate Taiji power, the 4 forces of earth, fire, water, and wind, or the power of destruction. Under the power of the black and white mystic light, they were all destroyed. Then they were divided into yin and yang and the 5 elements, turning into the purest power that was absorbed by Feng Zichen. The black and white mystic light was one of the 10 supreme divine abilities of the primordial world, the Khanate Yin-Yang Destruction Divine Light. It had the power to destroy everything and return to Yin and Yang. With this light protecting him, no matter how dangerous the Taiji painting was, it could not hurt Feng Zichen at all. Rumble. Perhaps feeling that the Khanate Yin-Yang Destruction Divine Light was not enough, Feng Zichen's heart moved. The 5 qi in his chest gathered and turned into 5 majestic great emperors, rushing out of his body. The 5 great emperors soared into the sky and released endless power. They formed a 5-colored canopy above Feng Zichen's head. It was majestic and gorgeous, with strands of Khanate 5 elements qi hanging down. The 5 great emperors were not the 5 heavenly emperors, nor the 5 elements sacred beasts, nor the 5 elements ancestral sorcerer. They were the 5 great emperors of the 5 paths, the heavenly emperor, the immortal emperor, the human emperor, the divine emperor, and the underworld emperor. They symbolized the 5 strongest great Daos of the primordial world. The 5 great emperors connected with each other, and the surrounding Khanate Taiji Qi seemed to be suppressed and calmed down. Then, Feng Zichen with the canopy of the 5 great emperors, accompanied by the Khanate Yin-Yang Destruction Divine Light, wandered around the world of the Taiji painting. Here there was no passage of time, up or down, left or right, and there were no living creatures. Other than the endless Khanate Taiji Qi, there was only endless loneliness. Feng Zichen wandered around aimlessly for a while, but he didn't find any exit. It was as if this world was boundless and had no end. Saint Taiching, since you invited me into the Taiji painting, how can I not give you a gift in return? How can I live up to your kindness? At a certain moment, Feng Zichen suddenly stopped and said with a strange smile. Then, Zichen unsheathed his sword and released a dazzling sword light, slashing forward. Whoosh, a snow-white sword light appeared, as if it was the light of the creation of heaven and earth. It slashed in the void, separating Yin and Yang and the 2 elements. In an instant, the 2 elements were separated, and Yin and Yang were born. Then Yin and Yang rotated, giving birth to endless power of creation. Then, the 4 elements and 8 trigrams appeared, giving birth to endless Tao laws. It was like a frame imprinted in the void, supporting a part of the world. Whoosh! Whoosh! Beams of dazzling sword light bloomed from Zichen's sword, carrying the Tao intent of the creation of heaven and earth. It slashed in the void, separating Yin and Yang and the 2 elements. Under the creation of Zichen's sword, this new world became more and more stable and perfect. Gradually, the Khanate 5 elements qi was born, filling every corner of the world. At a certain moment, Feng Zichen's heart stirred, and a drop of blood essence flew out of his body, landing in this new world. Boom! The drop of blood essence fell. At first, it was only a drop the size of a soybean, but when it entered the new world, it was tainted with the aura of the birth of heaven and earth. Its body began to expand rapidly, and soon, it became hundreds of millions of miles in size. At the same time, the body of the drop of blood essence was constantly stretching. The moment it landed on the ground, it had already turned into a towering immortal mountain, standing between heaven and earth, supporting the world. This mountain was the heavenly pillar of this world. When the heavenly pillar was erected, the boiling power of earth, fire, water, and wind instantly calmed down, and heaven and earth were completely stabilized. Outside this world, a faint light curtain appeared, isolating this world from the outside world's Khanate Taiji Qi. This was the heavenly curtain of this world. Haha! Seeing this world take shape, Feng Zichen chuckled, stepped into this world, sat cross-legged on the peak of the heavenly pillar, and began to operate this world. Rumble. Chapter 793. Such a large-scale burning of the origin of the world was also a huge damage to this world. One could see that under the sweeping of the Khanate Taiji Qi, the sky of this world had long shattered. The earth and sky were also slowly collapsing. It would not be long before this world would completely shatter and return to chaos. However, it did not matter. As long as he could achieve his goal, so be it if this world was destroyed. As long as its destruction was valuable. The large-scale reduction of the Khanate Taiji Qi caused the world inside the Taiji painting to become unstable. The entire world was shaking. It was reflected in the outside world. Everyone saw that not long after Feng Zichen entered, the Taiji painting began to tremble violently, as if someone was attacking crazily inside. However, the Taiji painting was a heaven-opening treasure after all. No matter how much it shook, there were no signs of it shattering. It seems that fellow Taoist Gaochen has already begun to break the situation. The Grand Pure One stroked his white beard and stared at the Taiji painting with a smile. He was very confident in the Taiji painting and did not think that Feng Zichen had the power to break out of the painting. However, the Taiji painting's performance inevitably caused a ripple in his heart. However, due to the fact that everyone was present, he could not go forward to check the situation of the Taiji painting. Otherwise, wouldn't it seem that he was not confident? The demeanor that he had tried his best to maintain previously had completely collapsed. Ripples continued in his heart, but for the sake of his face, the Grand Pure One had no choice but to put on a confident smile. He was smiling on the surface, but in his heart, putting aside what the Grand Pure One was thinking, the Taiji painting could not be replenished with the large-scale loss of the Kane Taiji Chi. There was a slight obstruction in its operation. It was this slight disharmony that allowed Feng Zichen to seize the opportunity and lock onto the origin of the Taiji painting. No, it was not Feng Zichen. There was a problem with the operation of the Taiji painting. He did not have the ability to lock onto the origin of the Taiji painting through this disharmony. The one who had locked onto the origin of the Taiji painting was the Taiji Patriarch. As the previous owner of the Taiji painting and its natural owner, the Taiji Patriarch was naturally very familiar with the Taiji painting. Any mistakes could not be hidden from the Taiji Patriarch's eyes. Found it. After confirming the origin of the Taiji diagram, Feng Zichen's eyes lit up, and he suddenly detonated the world under his feet. With a boom, the Taiji painting trembled and almost fell from the sky. The Grand Pure One's heart tightened. He thought that the Taiji painting had been broken by Feng Zichen. He took a look and saw that the Taiji diagram still did not show any signs of shattering. Only then did he relax. However, for some reason, a layer of haze gradually covered the Grand Pure One's heart. Within the Taiji diagram, as the small world self-detonated, boundless energy erupted, causing that flaw to be magnified infinitely. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Feng Zichen's incarnation, the Taiji Patriarch, separated from his body and quietly came to the origin of the Taiji painting to hide. The Taiji Patriarch's aura was the same as the Taiji diagram. Because he was the old master of the Taiji diagram would not reject him. Therefore, if the Taiji Patriarch hid in the Taiji diagram, unless he took the initiative to expose himself, the Grand Pure One would not be able to detect his traces. Leaving the Taiji Patriarch in the Taiji diagram was an unstable bomb to the Grand Pure One. At the same time, it was also the beginning of the Taiji diagram leaving the Grand Pure One's control and returning it to its original owner. The seed had been planted. Next, it was time for it to take root and sprout. After doing all that, Feng Zichen looked around and prepared to leave. Now that there was a problem with the operation of the Taiji diagram, it was the best time for him to escape. Boom! With a thought, the human Tao Imperial Seal and the 10,000 Spirit Crown emitted a resplendent light at the same time. An incomparable power surged out from Feng Zichen's body and swept out in all directions. Rumble. At this moment, the origin of the Taiji diagram was shaken by this powerful force and some cracks appeared. At the same time, the Taiji Patriarch's incarnation seized the opportunity and crawled into the crack before the origin of the Taiji diagram recovered, fusing with it. Open. Before the first attack retreated, Feng Zichen's second attack had already followed. With the support of the two Khanate treasures, the Zichen sword bloomed with unprecedented light and turned into an unparalleled sword light that swept forward. Rumble. When the sword appeared, heaven and earth shook. The unbreakable void shattered under Feng Zichen's stunning sword light, and a huge crack appeared. Through this crack, one could vaguely see the outside world. Ah, let's go. Feng Zichen reached out and grabbed a ball of Khanate Taiji origin from the nearby void. Only then did he laugh and step out of the Taiji diagram. That ball of Khanate origin was none other than the origin of heaven and earth left behind after the greater thousand world that he had created was destroyed. Although he had burned a lot of it before because he had swallowed too much Khanate Taiji Chi, not only did it not decrease, but it had also become stronger. The purest quintessence of the heavens and the earth left behind after the destruction of a major world was worth as much as a supreme-grade natural spirit treasure. Even if the Taiji diagram had a deep foundation, it would be weak for a period of time after suddenly losing so much origin. This time, the Grand Pure One had suffered a great loss when he let Feng Zichen walk into the Taiji diagram. In the outside world, what everyone saw was this scene. After the Taiji diagram trembled for a moment, it suddenly shone brightly. Endless Khanate Taiji Chi surged out and shattered the surrounding void. Then, a graceful figure slowly walked out of the void and arrived in front of everyone. Grand Pure One, I was lucky to win this round. Looking at the Grand Pure One, Feng Zichen said humbly. And at the instant his voice fell, the Taiji diagram suddenly retracted all the strange phenomena and returned to normal. However, compared to before, its aura was clearly much weaker. It was obvious that it was severely injured. Hiss. Holding the Taiji diagram in his hand, the Grand Pure One sensed the loss of the treasure's origin and could not help but gasp in pain. Fellow Taoist Yuan. The karma between you and the poor way is over. Without asking Feng Zichen how he broke the Taiji diagram, the Grand Pure One suppressed the anger in his heart and replied stiffly. Thank you for letting me win, Grand Pure One. Feng Zichen smiled humbly and retracted his gaze from the Grand Pure One. The Grand Pure One's expression management was very good. Feng Zichen could not see anything strange on his face. He did not know if he had noticed the abnormality of the Taiji diagram. However, it did not matter. He had already tried his best. If the Grand Pure One could still discover it, there was nothing he could do. However, according to Feng Zichen's estimation, the Grand Pure One should not have discovered it. Otherwise he would not have been so calm. Just wait and see. If the Grand Pure One really discovered something unusual, he would definitely attack the Taiji Patriarch. At that time he would know everything. After a while the Grand Pure One asked Feng Zichen. The karma between us has been settled. Fellow Taoist Gaochen, how are you going to settle the karma between you and the poor way? Hearing that, Feng Zichen thought for a while and replied, Grand Pure One, there's no hurry. It won't be too late to talk about it after I finish discussing the Tao with the other 4 saints. After saying that, Feng Zichen looked at the other 4 people and asked, May I know which fellow Taoist will be the next to ask the question? After receiving the answer, the Grand Pure One did not say anything and silently retreated to the side. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning took a step forward and took out the Pangu banner. Fellow Taoist Gaochen, the poor way has a Pangu banner. There's a world inside. Fellow Taoist, please go in and take a look. If you can walk out within 100 years, the karma will disappear. Vice versa. As he spoke, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning threw out the Pangu banner and stood in the void. In an instant, a mighty force that could destroy everything spread out from the Pangu banner, shattering everything around it. The Pangu banner was formed by the blade of the heaven-opening axe. It was the best treasure among the 3 treasures of heaven opening. Back then, Pangu had used that treasure to break through the chaos and create the world. It had the power to tear apart the chaos in Hongmeng, shatter the space-time power of the heavens, the Tao of creation, the power to control the profundities of all Dharma, and the ability to create the universe. It was known as the nemesis of all defensive Dharma treasures. In terms of killing, that treasure could be considered the best in the primordial world. Even the god-slaying spear and the immortal vanquishing 4 swords could not compare to it. The Pangu banner stood in the void, appearing chaotic and mysterious yellow. On the banner, the baleful aura of the heavenly god surged, as if it wanted to destroy the chaos and open up the world again. The banner showed the supreme scene of the great god Pangu creating the world. Outside the banner, there were prophecies of the great Tao surrounding it, and inside the banner there were heaven-opening talismans. The 5-colored light illuminated the heavens. Pangu's saint aura shocked the universe. Just looking at the Pangu banner, Feng Zichen felt a great pressure. Could even break the world, let alone a saint. In theory, if the power of the Pangu banner was fully unleashed, it could even split the heavenly Tao, let alone a saint. However, because the 3 treasures of heaven opening were too powerful, Pangu was worried that they would affect the operation of the heavenly Tao. Therefore he sealed most of their power. For this reason, the 3 treasures of heaven opening appeared in the primordial world as connate merit cardinal treasures. No way, no way. Could it be that someone really thought that the 3 treasures that Pangu used to create the world were only connate cardinal treasures? Was it a joke? How could Feng Zichen, who had several connate cardinal treasures, not know that connate cardinal treasures had such great power? As cardinal treasures, the Pangu banner, the Taiji painting, and the Chaos Bell were called heaven-opening cardinal treasures. They could be separated and form their own system. The other treasures, such as the Zhouxing painting, the Cosmic Cauldron, and so on, were called connate cardinal treasures. Yes, it was also because most of the power of the 3 treasures of heaven opening had been sealed by Pangu that the Grand Pure One, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning, and the East Emperor Tai could not completely refine the 3 treasures. If not for that, why would Feng Zichen dare to have designs on the Taiji painting? Chapter 794. A Dharma treasure that had been completely refined was equivalent to its owner's clone. Basically, no one could take it away. However, a Dharma treasure that had not been completely refined was different. As long as it was branded with someone else's mark, there was a possibility that it could be taken away. Fellow Taoist, please? Seeing that Feng Zichen did not move for a long time, the primeval Lord of Heaven reminded him. All right, let me experience the power of the number one killing treasure in the untainted land. After taking a deep look at the primeval Lord of Heaven, Feng Zichen stepped into the Pangu banner. Boom, boom, boom. As soon as he entered the Pangu banner, the purplish-black Duqian divine killing chi surged toward Feng Zichen in an overwhelming manner. If it were anyone else, they would probably be scared out of their wits when they saw the Duqian divine killing chi and would hurriedly resist. However, Feng Zichen was different. He opened his mouth and inhaled, swallowing all the Duqian divine killing chi into his stomach. Feng Zichen, who had already reverted to the Pangu Taoist body, was not afraid of the Duqian divine killing chi at all. To others, the Duqian divine killing chi might be the most terrifying power in the world. However, to him it was just a tonic. After the Duqian divine killing chi, there were streaks of chaotic sword light that could split the sky and earth. They slashed from the depths of the Duqian world, densely packed and innumerable. Not daring to be careless, Feng Zichen directly activated the 10,000 spirit crown, and 72 streaks of dark light hung down to protect himself. At the same time, the two supreme-grade innate spiritual treasures, Zichen Sword and Million Sword Illustration, together with the innate ultimate treasure, the Human Tao Emperor Seal, blasted forward crazily under the control of Feng Zichen. The Pangu banner was not the Taiji diagram. Feng Zichen did not have the help of the Taiji ancestor to deal with it. If he wanted to break through, he could only use brute force. Moreover, it was not enough to destroy it from the inside. He had to use some external tricks. While Feng Zichen was frantically unleashing his mystic abilities in the Duqian realm, the outside world wasn't calm either. The myriad gods portrait hanging above the conferred god altar suddenly soared into the air and ruthlessly slammed into Pangu's banner. The current painting of the gods was incredible. The return of the myriad gods caused the destiny of the divine Tao to be perfect. As the treasure of destiny of the divine Tao, the power of the myriad gods diagram naturally increased as well. Once it erupted, its might was comparable to a connate cardinal treasure with the support of the divine Tao fortune. And just as the million gods painting was about to collide with Pangu's banner, the heaven and earth trembled and the innate sword Tao descended, turning into an invisible divine sword that slashed towards Pangu's banner from afar. Before the primeval Lord of Heaven could react, the Pantheon painting and the connate sword Tao had already struck Pangu's banner. Whoosh! Sensing danger, the Pangu's banner spontaneously flared with boundless light, turning into streaks of chaotic sword light that slashed at the two treasures. Heaven and earth trembled with a boom and even time and space seemed to freeze. An unparalleled power erupted, sweeping out in all directions with Pangu's banner as the center. Everywhere it passed, space shattered layer by layer, and rules and order crumbled one after another. Everything was destroyed, transforming into a state of nothingness. The onlookers couldn't help but be alarmed by this scene. They hurriedly employed various methods to eliminate the aftershocks of the mystic abilities. After the clash, the Pantheon painting and the connate sword Tao were both sent flying. As for Pangu's banner, nothing seemed to have changed on the outside, but the Duqian realm within it was in turmoil. Feng Zichen seized the opportunity and activated the Human Tao Imperial Seal with all its might. It turned into a giant Pangus phalanx and stabbed viciously at the Duqian realm. For some reason, the Pangus phalanx seemed to resonate with something in the depths of the Duqian realm. Then a streak of black light flew out and fused with the Pangus phalanx. In an instant, the power of the Pangus phalanx increased by a great deal. Rumble. A hole was forcefully punched through the Duqian realm. Let's go. Feng Zichen didn't dare to hesitate and didn't have time to check the situation of the Human Tao Imperial Seal. He put away all the treasures and turned into a ray of purple light that entered the crack of the Duqian world and charged out. In the outside world, the onlookers had just calmed down the mystic abilities when they saw Feng Zichen charge out of the Pangu's banner. Fellow Taoist primeval beginning, thank you for letting me win. Feng Zichen said modestly as he walked up to the primeval Lord of Heaven. He was in a very good mood right now, not because he'd broken through the Pangu's banner, but because of the changes in the Human Tao Imperial Seal. Just now, Feng Zichen had discovered that the black light surging out of the depths of the Duqian realm was a wisp of the Pangu's imprint. When the Pangu's imprint fused with the Pangu's phalanx, the phalanx, which had only been an empty shell, regained a wisp of the Pangu's Taoist rhyme. This alone was enough to double the power of the Pangu's phalanx. Not to mention, after regaining the Pangu's Taoist rhyme, the Pangu's phalanx had turned from a dead object to a living object and had the possibility of continuing to grow. He'd only been invited by the primeval Lord of Heaven to challenge the Panga's banner once. He hadn't expected to obtain a fortuitous opportunity from it. How could Feng Zichen not be happy? My friend, you're really good. The primeval Lord of Heaven said with a dark face as he put away the Panga's banner. He hadn't expected that Feng Zichen would choose to attack the Panga's banner from the outside. He'd been careless for a moment and had run out. Otherwise, the primeval Lord of Heaven would have refined him to death in the Panga's banner. You're welcome, you're welcome. Feng Zichen, who was in a good mood, pretended not to hear the sarcasm in the primeval Lord of Heaven's words and replied politely to him. Umph. Seeing this, the primeval Lord of Heaven snorted coldly and turned around to retreat. Then, before Feng Zichen could speak, the Tongtian sect leader stood up and said to him, My friend Gaochen, the poor way will set the next test. Sage, please enlighten me. Feng Zichen stopped smiling and replied seriously. The Tongtian sect leader waved his hand and said with a smile, No rush, no rush. My friend Gaochen, you've passed 2 tests in a row and must have consumed a lot of energy. The poor way has no intention to take advantage of you. I'll wait for you to recover a little before I set the test. Hearing this, Feng Zichen didn't refuse and silently devoured the Khanate origin to recover. Just as the Tongtian sect leader had said, he had consumed a lot of energy after passing 2 tests in a row and didn't have much energy left. Especially in the Tai Chi diagram, he had almost used up half of his energy. The Tongtian sect leader's problem is most likely the fairy slaying sword formation, Feng Zichen thought silently as he recovered. The Tai Ching sage's test was the Tai Chi diagram, and the primeval Lord of Heaven's test was the Panga's banner. If there were no accidents, the Tongtian sect leader's test should be the fairy slaying sword formation. This was probably the most difficult test. As long as the fairy slaying sword formation was broken, the remaining 2 saints would be nothing to be afraid of. However, this fairy slaying sword formation was probably not easy to break. It wasn't that it was stronger than the Tai Chi diagram and the Panga's banner, but because of the uniqueness of the fairy slaying sword formation. When the world mentioned the fairy slaying sword formation, they probably only knew that this formation was unparalleled in killing and could not be broken without the 4 saints. However, very few people knew that the fairy slaying sword formation was not only a killing formation, but also a trapping formation. The so-called, it could not be broken without the 4 saints could be understood in another way. Only when the 4 saints worked together could they break the fairy slaying sword formation. What if the 3 saints worked together? Chapter 795. Taoist friend Gaochen, please? After the immortal killing sword formation was set up, Sect Master Tong Tian invited Feng Zichen to enter and then took the lead to enter the sword formation, waiting for him at the eye of the formation. There were 4 gates in the fairy slaying sword formation, east, west, north and south. Above each gate, there was a Khanate killing sword hanging upside down. The first fairy slaying sword, the second fairy slaughtering sword, the third fairy trapping sword, and the 4th fairy eliminating sword. The east was the fairy slaying gate, which was guarded by the fairy slaying sword. Its sharpness was the best among the 4 swords. The west was the fairy trapping gate, which was guarded by the fairy trapping sword. When the fairy trapping sword moved, all immortals were killed. The south was the celestial slaying gate, which was guarded by the fairy slaughtering sword. The north was the Jueshin gate, which was guarded by the Jueshin sword. To break this formation, 4 experts of the same level had to take down 4 swords at the same time. It was useless to take down 1 sword. It was not good to take down all 4 swords at the same time. One could imagine how difficult it was to break this formation. At the end of the primordial age, the demon ancestor Luoho had set up this formation. Even when the 4 super experts, Ancestor Hongjun, Ancestor Yang Mei, Ancestor Yin Yang, and Ancestor Chen Kuan joined forces, they could not break this formation. In the end, it was because Ancestor Yin Yang and Ancestor Chen Kuan risked their lives to break the formation that the fairy slaying sword formation had a flaw. Ancestor Yin Yang and his 3 incarnations took down 4 swords at the same time to break this formation. In an unknown time and space, Tong Tian had set up this formation. The 4 sages joined forces with 2 Khanate treasures to break this formation. Feng Zichen wanted to break this formation by himself, which could not be described as difficult. However, it was fortunate that he was not breaking the formation but only breaking through it. This undoubtedly reduced the difficulty by a lot. While Feng Zichen was thinking, Tong Tian had already arrived at the eye of the formation. He stood on a platform and shouted at him, "Taoist friend Gaochen, if you can break through here, you win this round." After that, Tong Tian closed his eyes and stopped talking, waiting for Feng Zichen to break through the formation. After taking a deep look at the immortal slaying sword formation, Feng Zichen moved. A majestic divine consciousness gushed out from his body and established contact with the Gaochen Imperial Star in the boundless starry sky. After bowing to the Gaochen Emperor Star, Feng Zichen suddenly said, "Fellow Gaochen, please lend me a hand." As soon as his voice fell, the Gaochen Imperial Star immediately shone brightly. Boundless starlight fell and slowly condensed into a human figure in front of Feng Zichen. At the same time, in the sky above the heavenly court, where endless golden light gathered, the providence of the heavenly court began to tremble. Immediately after, a huge amount of fate energy suddenly separated from the heavenly court's fate energy, turning into the image of the North Star and pouncing towards the figure formed by the North Star's starlight. On the other side, the diagram of the gods trembled, bringing over divine Tao luck. The Gaochen's fate descended and transformed into a noble imperial robe that draped over the figure condensed from starlight. The diagram of the gods flew over and landed in his right hand. The divine Tao luck energy also fused with him, causing his face to gradually become clearer. It was Feng Zichen's appearance. To be precise, it was his appearance when he was the Emperor of the North Star in the Heaven Realm. "Greetings, fellow Taoist." As soon as the incarnation took shape, he bowed to Feng Zichen. At the same time, a powerful aura spread out from his body, sweeping through the heavens and the earth, the past, the present, and the future. Primordial Chaos. Primordial Chaos Daluo Jingxian. This was another expert on the level of Primordial Chaos Daluo Jingxian. This Gaochen incarnation was formed by Feng Zichen using the essence of the Gaochen Imperial Star, supplemented by the providence of the heavenly court and divine Tao luck. Therefore, when it was born, it had a mighty power comparable to Primordial Chaos Daluo Jingxian. However, although its combat strength was strong, it had a huge flaw, and that was that it could not exist for a long time. At most, it could last for a period of time before dissipating. Otherwise, Feng Zichen would be invincible. Of course, just a period of time was enough for Feng Zichen to deal with the current crisis. After bowing to the Emperor of the North Star's incarnation, Feng Zichen said, "Thank you for coming to help, fellow Taoist. Please rest at the side for a while. 2 other fellow Taoists will be coming later." After saying that, Feng Zichen bowed in the direction of the human race and shouted, "I'm in trouble today. Please help me." As soon as he finished speaking, the providence of the human race and the path of the gods and demons shook at the same time and gathered in this direction. At the same time, the human Tao imperial seal in Feng Zichen's hand trembled non-stop. It flew out of his hand and fused with the 2 surging providences. Not long after, a majestic emperor wearing an imperial robe and a crown appeared in front of everyone with the imperial seal in his hand. His appearance was exactly the same as when Feng Zichen ruled over the human race. This was another primordial chaos expert, the sacred emperor of the ancient human race, the founder of the path of the gods and demons, the Zichen clan of the human race. The Zichen clan greets fellow Taoist. After sensing the aura of the mark of the great Taoist priests, the surrounding Pangu's power all rushed toward it. Under the power of Pangu, the mark representing the identity of the great Taoist priests suddenly began to twist and slowly turned into a figure. In the end, the power of Pangu and the mark of the great Taoist priests disappeared at the same time, forming a supreme deity who looked exactly like Feng Zichen. Boom! As soon as the supreme deity appeared, a majestic power spread out from his body. The level of the power was only that of the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, but it gave people the feeling that he could suppress everything and was even more powerful than the way of heaven. Under this power, the power of the extremely powerful immortal slaying sword formation was suppressed by 20% and could only exert 80% of its power. This was the weakening of the will of heaven and earth. Even if Tong Tian tried his best, he could not erase this suppressive power. Not only the immortal slaying sword formation, but the power of the rest of the people was also weakened by 20% when facing the supreme deity. It felt as if heaven and earth did not want anyone to hurt the supreme deity, so it took the initiative to suppress the power of all living beings to protect his safety. This incarnation was formed by Feng Zichen with the mark of the great Taoist priests and the power of Pangu. In a sense, it was not wrong to say that he was the noblest existence in the untainted land. Therefore, no one would be surprised by anything that happened to him, because his existence itself was beyond common sense. Before the fight started, the power of the immortal slaying sword formation was weakened by 20%. For a moment, Tongtian's heart could not help but sink. He felt that he was a little overconfident in this battle. He should not have been so confident to let Feng Zichen break the formation instead of breaking it. However, Tongtian had already said it. Even if he felt guilty, he could not change his words now. After the great Taoist priests appeared, he bowed to Feng Zichen and said, "Greetings, Taoist brother. I am from the Panga Zichen clan." "Greetings, Taoist brother. Thank you for coming to help." After returning the salute, Feng Zichen looked at the three incarnations of the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian in front of him and sighed with emotion in his heart. If these three incarnations could exist in the world forever, who in the untainted land could be his opponent? It was not nonsense to rule the world with one hand. Alas, although these incarnations of luck were strong, they could not exist for long. It was really a pity. This was also the reason why everyone was not too shocked when they saw Feng Zichen summon three incarnations of the primordial chaos in a row. They also knew this method of using luck to create an incarnation. They were also well aware of the drawbacks. The only difference was that they could not summon three incarnations at once like Feng Zichen. Looking at the three of them, Feng Zichen said, "Fellow Taoists, I am in trouble today. I hope you can help me and accompany me to break through the immortal slaying sword formation, which is one of the top three in the untainted land." Strictly speaking, these three people could not be regarded as the incarnations of Feng Zichen. Instead of calling them the incarnations of Feng Zichen, it was better to say that they were the manifestation of luck in the human world. In essence, they were the incarnations of luck. However, they were manifested through Feng Zichen's hands and had a relationship with him. Therefore, Feng Zichen was very polite to the three of them. The three of them had different personalities. After hearing Feng Zichen's request, they each replied, "It's a piece of cake." "Well said, well said. Fellow Taoist, you are too polite." After talking to the three of them, Feng Zichen turned to look at the immortal slaying sword formation and suddenly took out the Zichen sword and the million sword illustration. Without the luck of the human tribe, the karmic position of the Emperor of North Star, and the mark of the great Taoist priests. Now, in addition to his powerful strength, Feng Zichen had the identity of the Khanate sword ancestor. Whoosh! Gently shaking the million gods illustration, Feng Zichen integrated it into the Zichen sword. For a moment, the power of the Zichen sword skyrocketed. At the same time, the Khanate sword principle fell silently and blessed the Zichen sword. Rumble. At this moment, the Zichen sword surpassed the limit and stepped into the level of Khanate ultimate treasure. At this time, Feng Zichen pointed at the immortal slaying sword formation and shouted, "Swords, come." The sword ancestor ordered. The famous swords of the primitive era vibrated together and each released a ray of sword light, rushing toward the direction Zichen sword was pointing in response to the sword ancestor's call. Even the two primordial killing swords, Yuan-Tu and Avicii, as well as the four immortal slaying swords in front of Feng Zichen, responded to his call. Each of them let out a sword cry and a wisp of sword light. Sword realm open. Seeing the sword light converging, Feng Zichen waved his sword fiercely. There were more than hundreds of millions of famous swords in the past and present. At this moment, all of their sword lights gathered together. Under Feng Zichen's control, the sword lights gradually converged and formed a huge world that belonged to swords. Then it slowly enveloped the immortal slaying sword formation. Under the sword realm, even the powerful immortal slaying sword formation was suppressed. Its power was suppressed by another 10%, leaving only 70%. Of course, if the immortal slaying sword formation was in its peak state, Feng Zichen could only suppress 5% of its power at most. However, the current immortal slaying sword formation only had 80% of its power left. Its power was not as strong as before. Under the suppression of Feng Zichen, he could suppress 10% of its power. In the immortal slaying sword formation, sect leader Tongtian's face had completely darkened. The battle had not yet begun, but the power of the immortal slaying sword formation had been weakened to only 70%. How could he fight? Looking at the four primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, sect leader Tongtian was speechless. Given the current situation of the immortal slaying sword formation, it was certain that the other party would break through. In fact, if he was not careful, the other party might even break his formation. The power of this array formation was suppressed too severely. With a thought, sect leader Tong Tian thought to himself, I should just surrender and admit defeat. It's better than losing face in front of everyone after the formation is broken. With that thought, sect leader Tong Tian cleared his throat and was about to speak. Ahem, fellow Taoist Gaochen, you're really good. The battle has not yet begun, but you've already broken half of Poor Wei's formation. In this case it's considered Poor Wei's loss. Sect leader Tong Tian had prepared his words, but before he could speak, Feng Zichen and the others had already entered the formation. Chapter 796. Fellow Taoists, leave the Celestial Slayer Gate to me, said Feng Zichen as he walked into the Celestial Slayer Gate. When the other three saw this, they each chose a door and entered. The North Star Emperor chose the Celestial Slayer Gate. The human sovereign Zichen clan chose the Celestial Slayer Gate. The Grand Taoist priests Pangu and the Zichen clan chose the Celestial Slayer Gate. The four of them stepped forward and entered the Celestial Slayer Sword formation. The Tong Tian sect leader didn't say anything about surrendering. He formed a seal with his hands and shot out streaks of lightning, hitting the four Celestial Slayer swords. The four swords vibrated when they were hit by the lightning. There was a supreme sword light that swept towards the four of them. When the four of them entered the formation, they saw yellow fog and golden light in front of them. It was like a cloud, dazzling one's mind. At the same time, a murderous aura appeared in the formation and turned into the shape of swords and halberds. It surrounded the four of them like an iron bucket. After the four of them stepped into the formation, the four gates disappeared. The space slowly closed and became one. It was east, west, north, and south. It was like a bronze wall. They stepped forward and were about to enter the formation. Suddenly, the four of them heard the sound of thunder. Then, billions of sword light covered the sky and covered the earth, drowning the four of them. There was a saying that when the sword light flashed in the Celestial Slayer sword formation, it would be difficult for him to escape even if he was an immortal. Seeing the sword light coming, the four of them felt chills all over their body. The Celestial Slayer sword light was extremely sharp. The Celestial Slayer sword light was fatal. The Celestial Slayer sword light was bloody. The Celestial Slayer sword light was full of changes. Whoosh! Before the other three of them could attack, Feng Zichen raised the Zichen sword and shot out billions of sword light to meet the attack. Rumble. The sword light collided with the Celestial Slayer sword light, but the Celestial Slayer sword light was stronger. It shattered Zichen's sword light and slashed towards Feng Zichen. Buzz buzz buzz. Inexplicably the void trembled and the phantoms of 10,000 spirits appeared. They gathered behind Feng Zichen and formed a dazzling divine halo. It hung behind his head and shrouded him in boundless divine light. Human Dao blessing, Human Dao halo. Although the sword light pierced through Feng Zichen's protective divine light, its power was reduced by another 30%. Human Dao halos had the ability to weaken the enemy's attacks. The immortal slaying sword light, which originally only had 70% of its power left, was now only 40% of its power after being weakened by 30%. What could 40% of his strength do? Dang 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 dang. When the sword light hit Feng Zichen's body, it made a sound as if iron was being struck, but it did not hurt him at all. It made sense. Feng Zichen's physical body had long been polished to the point where it was comparable to a primordial treasure. How could the immortal slaying sword beam, which only had 40% of its power, hurt him? Seeing this scene, Tongtian's face, which was already dark, became as dark as the bottom of a pot. He really wanted to leave. How was he going to fight? This was not the way to bully others. This was the first time the immortal slaying sword formation had shown its power in his hands, and he had encountered such an opponent. This had dealt a heavy blow to Tongtian's confidence. Moreover, if the immortal slaying sword formation, which could not be broken except by the four saints, was broken by one person, then everyone would not say that the immortal slaying sword formation was not good enough, but that he, Tongtian, was not good enough. After all, the immortal slaying sword formation had a glorious battle record in the hands of the demon ancestor Luoho. Because of this, it was known as one of the three great formations of the primordial world. Why did the same magic treasure become useless when it was in his hands? Then wasn't it obvious whose problem it was? He could not let the reputation of the immortal slaying sword formation fall in his hands. Thinking of this, Tongtian's face darkened, and he exerted more strength to activate the immortal slaying sword formation. In an instant, the power of the sword light that surged over increased by 30%. Moreover, in the sword formation, there was suddenly an endless murderous aura. It was like a bloody cloud that was extremely ferocious. It enveloped the four people in the formation and eroded their innate true spirits, obliterating their vitality. After Feng Zichen realized that the immortal slaying sword light did not have any effect on him, his gaze suddenly became strange. He felt that he could break the immortal slaying sword formation by himself. It was not to break through the immortal slaying sword formation, but to break the formation and take down the four immortal slaying swords by himself. Did he seem to value the immortal slaying sword formation too much by summoning his three incarnations? At present, other than the suppression power of the incarnation of the great Taoist priests, the other two incarnations had not made a move yet. Moreover, looking at the current situation, it seemed that there was no chance for them to make a move. As expected, this immortal slaying sword formation is not complete. After looking around at the immortal slaying sword formation, Feng Zichen silently withdrew his gaze. As he expected, the Grandmaster of Heaven's immortal slaying sword formation was not complete. Dao ancestor Hongjun had left a trick up his sleeve. As one of the three great formations of the untainted land, how could the immortal slaying sword formation be so weak that it was broken by Feng Zichen by himself? No matter how badly the immortal slaying sword formation was suppressed, it should not be like this. The reason why Feng Zichen was confident that he could break the immortal slaying sword formation was not because he was too powerful, but because the immortal slaying sword formation was not complete, causing his power to be far less powerful than in the legends. One must know that when the demon ancestor Rahu set up the immortal slaying sword formation, he had already been fighting with the 5 clan leaders of the 3 innate clans for many days and was seriously injured by the 5 innate sacred beasts. It was under such circumstances that the demon ancestor Rahu set up the immortal slaying sword formation in a seriously injured state and fought against the 4 peerless masters including Dao ancestor Hongjun. Dao ancestor Hongjun was at the half-step primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian realm. He held the heaven-opening treasure, the Pangu banner. Patriarch Yin Yang was also at the half-step primordial chaos realm. He held the heaven-opening treasure, the Taiji diagram. Patriarch Heaven and Earth was also at the half-step primordial chaos realm. He held the Khanate cardinal treasure, the cauldron of heaven and earth. Patriarch Yang Mei and the half-step primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian had unknown Dharma treasures, but they were definitely not weaker than the heaven-opening treasure. 4 great masters of the same level came with 4 powerful Khanate cardinal treasures. They joined forces to fight the seriously injured demon ancestor Rahu. The difference in strength between the two sides was extremely obvious. This should have been a crushing situation. But the result was, 2 of the 4 great masters were killed before the immortal slaying sword formation was broken and demon ancestor Rahu was forced to self-detonate. From this, it could be seen how powerful the immortal slaying sword formation was. Compared to demon ancestor Rahu's immortal slaying sword formation, and then look at the immortal slaying sword formation set up by the Grandmaster of Heaven. What the hell is this? Primordial Chaos number 1 killing formation? Don't come out and embarrass yourself. If this formation was seen by outsiders, they would think that there was no one in the primordial chaos. Why did this happen? Because Grandmaster Tongtian's immortal slaying sword formation was missing a lot of formation materials. The complete immortal slaying sword formation was not only made up of the immortal slaying 4 swords and the immortal slaying sword formation. It also had many powerful Khanate spiritual treasures. Why did Feng Zichen know so much? Of course, he saw it from Patriarch Yin Yang's memories. From that small piece of Patriarch Yin Yang's Khanate indestructible true spirit fragment, Feng Zichen saw all of his memories. Among them, it included the last moment of his life, when he fought the demon ancestor Rahu in the immortal slaying sword formation. Through Patriarch Yin Yang's vision, Feng Zichen saw the complete immortal slaying sword formation, which was many times grander than the one set up by Grandmaster Tongtian. It was the real immortal slaying sword formation. It was the supreme formation that the Chaos Demon God had comprehended from the Great Tao inheritance. Once it was set up, it directly covered more than half of the Western land. In front of him, the immortal slaying sword formation set up by Grandmaster Tongtian was not small, but compared with the immortal slaying sword formation that covered more than half of the Western land, it was the difference between Mount Kunlun and Mount Buzhou. At that time the primordial chaos had not been broken. How big was more than half of the Western land? It was much bigger than the current primordial chaos. Feng Zichen found that the immortal slaying sword formation set up by the sky-reaching school was completely different from the immortal slaying sword formation he saw in the memory of Taiji ancestor. That was why he dared to enter this formation with confidence. If Grandmaster Tong Tian had set up the complete version of the Immortal Slaying Sword formation, Feng Zichen would have surrendered and admitted defeat. Although the evil spirit in the Immortal Slaying Sword formation was powerful, even the ordinary Daluo Taoist priests would be killed in an instant if they touched it. However, Feng Zichen and the other three were not ordinary people. They could even eat the evil spirit in the Immortal Slaying Sword formation. The evil spirit in the Immortal Slaying Sword formation was not even enough to tickle them. As for the sword light of the Immortal Slaying Sword, it was more powerful, but Feng Zichen added another layer of defense for himself. Thanks to deity Taoist Ziyun and Taoist Donghua, who had tried their best to refine an emperor's robe for him, which was at the level of a primordial spirit treasure. A defensive magic treasure of this level was rare in the entire untainted land. With the protection of the emperor's robe and the 72 mysterious lights hanging down from the 10,000 spirit crown, the Immortal Slaying Sword formation, which only had 40% of its power left, could not even break Feng Zichen's defense, let alone hurt him. In this way, Feng Zichen withstood the attack of the Immortal Slaying Sword formation and walked slowly in the direction of sect leader Tong Tian. Seeing this, sect leader Tong Tian's face was so cold that a layer of frost could be scraped off. At this time he really wanted to take out the Qingping sword and poke a few holes in Feng Zichen's body to suppress his arrogance. However, sect leader Tong Tian had said before that this sentence only tested the Immortal Slaying Sword formation. Therefore, except for the Immortal Slaying Sword formation, he could not use any other magic treasures. Otherwise, how could sect leader Tong Tian let Feng Zichen be so proud? He would have used all kinds of magic treasures to smash his head. Looking at sect leader Tong Tian's increasingly ugly face, Feng Zichen could not help but point out the key point. Sect leader, do you feel that there is something wrong with the power of the Immortal Slaying Sword formation? It seems to be much weaker than the rumors? As he walked leisurely, Feng Zichen said to sect leader Tong Tian. Hearing this, sect leader Tong Tian's heart could not help but sink. Without Feng Zichen's reminder, he also noticed that the situation of the Immortal Slaying Sword formation was not right. Judging from the current performance of this formation, it was completely inconsistent with the rumors. Its power was much weaker. Sect leader Tong Tian was very suspicious whether this formation was really as the Tao ancestor said, that only the four saints could break it. If he was not careful, he would be tricked by the Tao ancestor. With the performance of the Immortal Slaying Sword formation, when the four saints came out together, he was afraid that they would directly tear down the formation and pull him out to fight. Fortunately, he had set up the Immortal Slaying Sword formation in advance and knew the power of this formation in advance. Otherwise, if he really believed the Tao ancestors' nonsense and used this formation to fight against the four saints, the consequences would be unimaginable. Narrowing his eyes slightly, sect leader Tong Tian stared at Feng Zichen with eyes full of surprise and doubt. Did he know something by asking this? Curious, sect leader Tong Tian asked directly. Yes, the power of this formation is indeed far less powerful than the rumors. Judging from its current performance, it is not a problem to say that it is one of the top 10 formations of the untainted land, but it is a bit exaggerated to say that it is one of the top 3. Why? Taoist Gaochen seems to know the reason. After saying that, sect leader Tong Tian stared at Feng Zichen closely, waiting for his answer to solve the doubts in his heart. Smiling, Feng Zichen did not answer sect leader Tong Tian's question. Instead he asked him, sect leader Tong Tian was born at the end of ancient times. Your experience is far from what Zichen can compare to. It can be said that you are experienced and knowledgeable. Then I wonder if sect leader Tong Tian has heard that when heaven and earth were first created, the chi of the four directions of heaven and earth gave birth to an innate door. Although he did not understand why Feng Zichen asked this question, sect leader Tong Tian still answered, of course I have heard of it. The four doors are all primordial spiritual treasures of the highest grade. They were obtained by Poor Wei's master. When Di Jun established the heavenly court, master gave them to him and turned them into the 4 heavenly gates of the heavenly court. Seeing that sect leader Tong Tian knew about it, Feng Zichen nodded and said, Sect leader Tong Tian, have you thought about the consequences if you turn these 4 innate doors into the 4 gates of the immortal killing sword formation? Wonderful. As soon as Feng Zichen's voice fell, sect leader Tong Tian felt his heart tremble. He really wanted to shout out loud. Turning the 4 innate doors into the gates of the immortal killing sword formation. Why didn't he think of such a wonderful idea before? The combination of these two things was simply a perfect match. It was as if they were born to be like this. They were born to be like this. Thinking of this, sect leader Tong Tian seemed to have understood something. He vaguely seemed to have grasped something, but he could not explain it clearly. Of course, it was a perfect match because the 4 doors of the original Immortal Killing Sword formation were composed of 4 primordial spiritual treasures of the highest grade. Later, when the formation was broken, the primordial doors were taken away by Ancestor Hong Jun and turned into the 4 heavenly gates of the heavenly court. When sect leader Tong Tian came to his senses, Feng Zichen continued to ask, "At the beginning of the world, the primordial 4 symbols Qi gave birth to a Taoist platform. Have you seen it?" After thinking for a while, sect leader Tong Tian replied, "Poor Wei seems to have seen 4 primordial Taoist platforms on the treasure-snatching rock. Each of them exuded the Qi of the 4 symbols. I think they are the treasures you are talking about." "But why do you ask about them? Are they also related to the Immortal Killing Sword formation?" Feng Zichen smiled and said, "Sect leader Tong Tan, don't you think there is something missing behind the 4 doors? If you put 4 primordial Taoist platforms corresponding to the primordial 4 symbols, wouldn't it be more perfect?" Without giving sect leader Tong Tian time to think, Feng Zichen continued to ask, "Moreover, if you set up a Taoist platform, shouldn't you put something on it? In this way it can be said to be perfect." "What should I put?" Sect leader Tong Tian asked almost subconsciously. "Yes, my thumb hurts. Writing is too tiring. It's too difficult. In addition, I met a fortune teller today. He told me that anyone who doesn't give me a monthly ticket for reading books won't have seasoning packs for instant noodles in the future. So, for your seasoning packs, give me your monthly ticket. Also, I beg you to come and support me. A lousy author looking for subscriptions online. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.